A woman walked into a town that didn't want her, climbed a mountain no one dared approach, and knocked on the door of a man the entire community had condemned. What happened next shattered everything Coldwater Bluff thought it knew about guilt, redemption, and the price of choosing love over fear. This is Clara's story. A tale of courage that defied judgment, silence that spoke louder than accusations, and two broken people who built something unbreakable from the ruins of scandal. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of Millard's General Store, and Clara Whitmore stepped down into the dust of Coldwater Bluff, with nothing but a weathered trunk and a letter folded in her coat pocket. The afternoon sun cut harsh shadows across the main street, and she could feel eyes on her before her boots even settled on the ground. She didn't look back at the driver, didn't wave, just stood there, one hand on the trunk's leather handle, taking in the town that would either become her home or her biggest mistake. Coldwater Bluff wasn't much to look at. A scatter of wooden buildings, a church with peeling paint, a saloon that had seen better decades. Mountains rose up behind it all like sentinels, dark with pine and shadow. And somewhere up there, hidden in those trees, lived the man she'd come to marry. "You sure about this, miss?" The driver's voice carried skepticism and something that might have been concern. "Still time to get back on. Next town's only 3 hours east." Clara turned to face him. He was older, weathered, the kind of man who'd seen enough foolishness to recognize it on sight. "I'm sure," she said. Her voice came out steady, which was more than she felt inside. He shook his head, climbed back up to his seat. "Your funeral." The words hung in the air as the coach pulled away, wheels grinding against packed dirt. Clara watched it go, that last connection to the world she'd left behind disappearing around the bend. Then she picked up her trunk, heavier than it looked, and turned toward the store. The bell above the door jangled as she pushed inside. 3 men stood at the counter, mid-conversation, and all 3 went silent the moment they saw her. The clerk, a thin man with spectacles that caught the light, straightened up. "Help you with something?" "I need directions," Clara said, setting the trunk down. Her back ached from the journey. 2 days on that coach, sleeping in fits, eating hard bread and dried meat. To Rowan Hale's property. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was thick, suffocating, the kind that pressed against your chest. One of the men, broad-shouldered with a mustache that drooped past his chin, let out a short laugh that held no humor. "You lost, lady." "No." Clara met his gaze without flinching. "I'm exactly where I need to be." "Rowan Hale," the clerk repeated like he was testing the words. "You family?" "Not yet." The broad-shouldered man's expression shifted from amusement to something harder. "You one of those mail-order types? Coming out here to—" "That's my business," Clara cut in. Not sharp, but firm. "Not yours. I asked for directions, not commentary." The clerk cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I don't know what you've heard or what arrangement you think you have, but Rowan Hale isn't the kind of man—" "I know exactly what kind of man he is." Clara's hands were steady on the counter now. "I've read his letters for 6 months. I know more than you think I do." "Letters?" The third man, older, with silver in his beard, spoke for the first time. "Words on paper don't tell you what a man's capable of. Don't tell you what he's done." Clara turned to him. "They tell me enough. Now, are you going to point me in the right direction, or do I need to start asking around town until someone does?" The clerk exchanged glances with the others. Finally, he sighed. "Trail starts past the old mill, north end of town. Follow it up into the hills. About 2 hours on foot if you don't get lost. House sits in a clearing near the ridge." "Thank you." "Miss," the clerk leaned forward, his voice dropping, "I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't warn you. Whatever Rowan told you in those letters, it's not the full picture. Man's got a past that ain't settled. Town's got long memories." "Then maybe," Clara said quietly, "the town should learn to forget." She picked up her trunk and walked back out into the sunlight before any of them could respond. The trail wasn't marked, but it was clear enough, packed earth where boots had walked before, branches broken back at shoulder height. Clara followed it past the mill, which stood silent and skeletal against the tree line, its wheel frozen mid-turn like time had stopped caring. The climb was harder than she'd expected. Her trunk kept catching on roots, and twice she had to stop and rest, sitting on fallen logs while her breathing steadied. The air thinned as she went higher, cooler, carrying the scent of pine and something else. Smoke, maybe, though she couldn't see any. She thought about the letters as she walked. 6 months of correspondence, started on a whim through an advertisement she'd seen in a Philadelphia newspaper. Man seeking companionship, remote location, honest work, no expectations beyond mutual respect. It had been the last line that caught her attention, the honesty of it, the lack of pretense. Rowan's first letter had been short, almost curt. He'd told her about the mountain, the isolation, the work he did cutting timber and hunting game. He hadn't mentioned why he lived alone. That came later, in the third or fourth exchange, when Clara had asked directly. There was a fire, he'd written. They said I started it. Burned down the Pritchard barn, killed 3 horses. I didn't. But proving innocence isn't the same as being believed. She'd written back asking why he stayed if the town had turned on him, because leaving would look like running. And I've done enough of that in my life. There was something in those words that resonated. Clara knew about running, knew about starting over in places that didn't ask questions. She'd been doing it since she was 16, since the day her father's debts caught up with him, and she'd found herself suddenly alone in a city that chewed up girls like her and spit them out, forgotten. She'd worked in factories, in kitchens, in boarding houses where the walls were thin and the pay was thinner. She'd saved every penny she could, kept her head down, learned how to be invisible. But invisibility got exhausting after a while. And then she'd seen that advertisement, and something in her chest had pulled tight with recognition. Maybe I'm tired of running too, she'd thought. So here she was, climbing a mountain to meet a man the world had decided wasn't worth knowing. The trees thinned as she reached higher ground, and suddenly the clearing opened up in front of her like a held breath released. The house wasn't much. Single story, rough-hewn logs, chinked with mud and moss. A stone chimney rose from one end, thin smoke curling from it into the gray sky. There was a shed off to the side, tools leaning against it, and a woodpile stacked neat and high. Everything about the place spoke of function, of survival stripped down to its essentials. And standing in front of the house, axe in hand, was Rowan Hale. He didn't move as Clara approached, just stood there, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He was taller than she'd imagined, broad across the shoulders, with dark hair that fell past his collar, and a beard that hadn't seen a razor in months. His clothes were worn, but clean. Flannel shirt, canvas pants, boots that had walked 1,000 miles. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Dark, guarded, carrying a weight that letters could never fully convey. Clara. Her name came out flat, not quite a question. Rowan. She set the trunk down, her arms grateful for the relief. I made it. Shouldn't have. The words landed hard, but Clara didn't flinch. You wrote me. Told me how to find you. I also told you to reconsider. He leaned the axe against the chopping block, wiped his hands on his pants. Multiple times. And I told you I'd made up my mind. Rowan exhaled through his nose, a sound caught between frustration and something else. He looked past her, toward the trail she'd climbed. Anyone see you come up? The men in the store. They weren't thrilled about giving directions. I bet. He turned back to her, and for the first time she saw something crack in that guarded expression. Uncertainty, maybe. Or fear. You don't know what you're walking into. Then tell me. I did. In the letters. You told me facts, Clara said. You told me about a fear and an accusation and a town that wouldn't listen. You didn't tell me what it cost you. Rowan's jaw tightened. What it cost me is my business. Not if you're asking me to stay here. Not if you're asking me to be part of this. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the scent of coming rain. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called out, shrill and lonely. Finally, Rowan nodded toward the house. You hungry? It wasn't an answer, but it was something. Inside, the house was spare but not uncomfortable. A single room divided by function. A bed in one corner, a table, and 2 chairs in another, a cast-iron stove against the wall. Shelves held supplies, canned goods, flour, salt, coffee. A rifle hung above the door, within easy reach. Rowan moved to the stove, his movements efficient, practiced. He didn't look at Clara as he worked, but she could feel him tracking her presence, aware of every shift and breath. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the table. Clara did, lowering herself into the chair carefully. Her legs ached from the climb. She watched as Rowan pulled out bread, cheese, dried venison. Simple food, but more than she'd had all day. He set the plate in front of her, then took the other chair, his own plate smaller. They ate in silence, the only sound the scrape of knife against wood and the occasional pop from the stove. "You're quieter than I expected," Rowan said eventually. Clara looked up. "So are you." "I don't talk much anymore. Gets easy, living alone." "I can imagine." "Can you?" There was an edge to the question. "Really?" Clara set down her knife. "My father drank himself to death when I was 16, left me with nothing but his debts, and a landlord who didn't care that I was barely more than a kid. I spent the next 10 years moving from city to city, taking whatever work I could find, sleeping in rooms so small I could touch both walls at once. I know what alone feels like. Maybe not the same way you do, but I know it." Rowan studied her, his expression unreadable. "That why you answered the ad? Looking for something different?" "Looking for something real." "Real." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Nothing real about this, Clara. You're chasing a story you made up in your head from letters that can't tell you the whole truth." "Then tell me the whole truth now." "Why? So you can decide I'm not worth the trouble and head back down that mountain before dark? Or so I can decide to stay?" The word hung between them, stay, and Clara saw something flicker across Rowan's face. Hope, maybe, buried so deep he didn't recognize it himself. He pushed back from the table, stood, walked to the window. Outside, the light was fading, the sky turning the color of bruised fruit. "The fire happened 3 years ago," he said, his back to her. "August. Drought had the whole valley dried out, and everyone was on edge about sparks. I'd been working on the Pritchard place earlier that week, fixing a fence line. We'd had words, nothing serious, just the usual back and forth about pay and hours. But when that barn went up, when those horses died screaming, everyone remembered those words." Clara stayed quiet, letting him talk. "Sheriff brought me in, asked questions I'd already answered. Where was I that night? Could anyone verify? Did I have reason to want Pritchard hurt?" Rowan's hands curled into fists against the windowsill. "I told them the truth. I was here, alone. No witnesses, no alibi. Just me and the mountain and a whole town ready to believe the worst." "But you were cleared," Clara said. "Eventually. Took 2 months. They found evidence. Accelerant residue that didn't match anything I owned, boot prints that weren't mine. Turned out it was Pritchard's own son, angry about being cut out of the will, trying to frame me and collect insurance. But by then," he trailed off, shook his head. "Damage was done. People don't forget, don't forgive. I became the man who might have done it, even after proof said otherwise. So you stayed." "So I stayed." He turned to face her. "Because running would have confirmed what they already thought, that I was guilty, that I had something to hide." Clara stood, moved closer. "And now? Now I live alone on a mountain, and the town pretends I don't exist, which is fine by me." "Is it?" Rowan's expression hardened. "What do you want me to say, Clara? That I'm lonely? That I put that ad in the paper because the silence was starting to eat me alive? That I wrote those letters to you because it felt like talking to someone who didn't already know my name and hate it? I want you to say the truth. The truth is you shouldn't be here. The truth is I'm not the man you think I am. The truth is—" He stopped, jaw working. "The truth is I don't know how to do this anymore, how to be around people, how to let someone in." Clara reached out, placed her hand on his arm. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "Then we'll figure it out," she said quietly. "Together. You say that now. Wait until winter sets in. Wait until you've been stuck in this house for days with nothing but wind and snow and me. Wait until the town starts talking, starts treating you the way they treat me. Let them talk." Easy to say, easy to mean. Clara's grip tightened. "I didn't come all this way to turn around at the first sign of difficulty, Rowan. I came because I read your letters and I saw something worth finding, something honest. And if you think I'm going to run just because things are hard, then you don't know me at all." Rowan stared at her, something raw and unguarded in his eyes. Then, slowly, he placed his hand over hers. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, he said, or the most foolish. Maybe both. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Yeah, maybe both. They didn't talk much more that night. Rowan gave Clara the bed, insisted on it despite her protests. He pulled a bedroll from a trunk and spread it on the floor near the stove, methodical and quiet. Clara lay in the dark, listening to the unfamiliar sounds, the creak of logs settling, the whisper of wind through the eaves, the steady rhythm of Rowan's breathing across the room. She'd made her choice. There was no going back now, even if she'd wanted to. And she didn't want to. When morning came, pale and cold through the single window, she found Rowan already awake, stoking the fire. He glanced up as she sat up, hair tangled and eyes heavy with sleep. "Coffee's ready," he said. "You drink it black?" "However it comes." He poured 2 cups, handed her one. The metal was warm against her palms, the steam rising to fog her vision. "I've got work to do today," Rowan said, "checking trap lines, cutting firewood. You can stay here if you want, rest." Clara shook her head. "I'll come with you. It's rough terrain. I made it up the mountain, didn't I?" He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Suit yourself, but keep up. I'm not slowing down." "Didn't ask you to." They set out after a quick breakfast. More bread, some jam Clara hadn't noticed the night before. The morning air bit sharp and clean, and Clara could see her breath clouding in front of her as they walked. Rowan led them through the trees, moving with the ease of someone who knew every root and stone by heart. He didn't talk, didn't point things out, just walked. Clara followed, her boots finding purchase on uncertain ground, her eyes adjusting to the filtered light through the canopy. The first trap was empty. So was the second. At the third, they found a rabbit, already stiff with cold. Rowan reset the trap with quick practice movements, his hands steady even in the chill. "You eat rabbit?" he asked, holding it up. "I'll eat whatever you cook." "Good, because that's mostly what we've got up here. Rabbit, venison, whatever's in season." They kept moving. Clara's legs burned with the effort of keeping pace, but she didn't complain, didn't ask to stop. She watched Rowan instead, the way he moved, the way he scanned the forest with sharp, careful eyes. This was his world. This was where he made sense. By midday, they'd checked all the traps and cut enough wood to fill the sled Rowan had brought. He loaded it methodically, stacking the logs with precision. "You're stronger than you look," he said, glancing at Clara. "I've worked hard jobs." "I'm starting to believe that." They dragged the sled back together, the runners hissing against dirt and needles. Clara's arms shook with the effort, but she gritted her teeth and pulled. When they reached the house, Rowan stopped, turned to her. "You didn't have to prove anything today." "Wasn't trying to prove anything, just trying to help." "Well?" He looked away, something almost like embarrassment crossing his face. "You did. So, thanks." It wasn't much, but coming from Rowan, it felt like a lot. Well, days turned into weeks. Clara fell into the rhythm of the mountain, waking early, working hard, sleeping deep. She learned which plants Rowan harvested for tea, which wood burned hottest, how to skin a rabbit without wasting meat. She learned the silence, too, the way it could be comfortable instead of oppressive. And slowly, Rowan began to open. Not all at once, not in grand gestures or long confessions, but in small moments. A comment about the weather, a story about a deer he'd seen once, a question about her life before. They cooked together, ate together, worked together. And somewhere in all that, the walls started to come down. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Rowan asked, "You ever regret coming here?" Clara looked up from the socks she was mending. "No. You? Regret writing those letters?" "Sometimes." He poked at the fire with a stick, sending up sparks. "But then you do something stubborn, and I remember why I did it." "Stubborn?" "You walked up a mountain with a trunk full of your whole life. You didn't know me. Didn't know if I'd even let you in the door. That's not brave, Clara. That's stubborn as hell." She smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is." They lapsed into comfortable quiet, the fire crackling between them. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said eventually. "Depends on the question." "Why didn't you leave? After everything. Why stay here where people hate you?" Rowan was quiet for a long time, then, "Because if I left, they'd win. They'd get to write the story, say I ran because I was guilty, and I'm not giving them that. I'm not giving them me. Clara nodded slowly. I understand that. Do you? My whole life, people have told me who I was supposed to be. Quiet, grateful, small. And I spent years trying to fit into that space. But it never felt right. Coming here, she met his eyes. This is the first time I felt like I could be something other than what people expected. Rowan's expression softened. Yeah, I get that. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Winter was coming. Clara could feel it in the air, in the way the cold settled deeper each night. Storm's rolling in, Rowan said, reading the wind like a language. Could be a rough one. We ready for it? We will be. We. The words settled warm in Claire's chest. They spent the next day securing everything, stacking more wood, checking the roof for weak spots, bringing in extra supplies from the shed. By evening, the first flakes were falling, fat and slow. Clara stood in the doorway, watching the snow blanket the clearing. Behind her, Rowan moved about the house, lighting lamps, stoking the fire. First snow, she said. Won't be the last. No. She turned to look at him. But it's still something. Rowan met her gaze, and for a moment something passed between them. An understanding, a recognition. They were in this together now. Whatever came next, they'd face it side by side. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of wind howling through the trees, of snow piling high against the door, of being trapped inside with nothing but each other for company. And it was fine. Better than fine, actually. They talked more in those 3 days than they had in the previous weeks combined. Rowan told her about his childhood, about a mother who'd died young and a father who'd taught him to hunt and fish and survive. Clara told him about Philadelphia, about the boarding house and the factory work, and the night she decided she was done being invisible. They played cards with a worn deck Rowan produced from somewhere. They read aloud from the few books he had. They cooked elaborate meals just to pass the time, experimenting with spices and combinations that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. And when the storm finally broke, when the sun came out hard and bright against all that white, they stood together in the doorway, surveying the changed landscape. Beautiful, Clara murmured. Rowan glanced at her. Yeah, it is. But he wasn't looking at the snow. Winter deepened. The town below seemed to forget the mountain existed, which suited both of them fine. They had everything they needed: food, warmth, each other. Clara had stopped thinking about the letters, about the distance between words on paper and the reality of shared space. This was real now, all of it. She noticed things about Rowan she couldn't have known from writing. The way he always checked the door twice before bed. The way he tensed when unexpected sounds came from the forest. The way he sometimes woke in the night, breathing hard, like he'd been running from something in his dreams. One night, she woke to find him sitting at the table, head in his hands. Rowan? He looked up, and even in the dim light she could see the exhaustion in his face. Sorry. Didn't mean to wake you. You didn't. Clara got up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, joined him at the table. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. He rubbed his face. Sometimes I forget, forget what happened, forget why I'm up here, and then I remember, and it's like it happened yesterday. The fire? The fire. The accusations. The way people looked at me. Like I was something dirty, something dangerous. His voice cracked. I can't get it out of my head, can't stop seeing their faces. Clara reached across the table, took his hand. You're not there anymore. Aren't I? I'm still on this mountain because of them, still hiding because they decided I was guilty. You're not hiding, you're surviving. What's the difference? The difference, Clara said firmly, is that hiding means you're afraid. Surviving means you're fighting, and you've been fighting every day since it happened. Rowan looked at her, something desperate in his eyes. I don't know how much longer I can keep fighting. Then let me help. That's why I'm here. You shouldn't have to. I want to. Clara squeezed his hand. You've been carrying this alone for 3 years. You don't have to anymore. For a long moment, Rowan didn't move. Then slowly, he turned his hand over, laced his fingers through hers. I'm not good at this, he said quietly. Letting people in. I know. I might mess it up. Probably. And you're still here. I'm still here. Rowan exhaled, something in his shoulders loosening. Okay. Okay. They sat like that until the first light crept through the window, hands clasped, silent but together. Spring came slowly to the mountain. The snow melted in patches, revealing brown earth and the stubborn green of new growth. Clara watched it happen with something like hope blooming in her chest. She'd been on the mountain for 5 months now. 5 months of learning and adapting and becoming something she'd never been before. A partner, a companion, a woman who chose her own path. Rowan had changed too. Not in obvious ways, but in small ones. He smiled more, talked more, let her see the parts of himself he'd kept buried. One afternoon, as they worked in the garden plot they'd started clearing, he said, "I've been thinking." Clara looked up from where she was pulling weeds. About? About going down to town. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "You don't have to," Clara said carefully. "I know. But I want to. Or, I want to. Does that make sense?" "Yeah, it does." Rowan sat back on his heels, dirt on his hands, sun on his face. "I can't let them keep me up here forever. Can't let what happened define the rest of my life." "What changed?" He met her eyes. "You did." Clara's heart skipped. "Rowan, I mean it. Before you came, I was just existing, going through the motions. But you made me remember what it feels like to want something more, to believe things could be different." He paused. "I want to try. Don't know if I can do it, but I want to try." Clara stood, brushed off her hands, moved closer. "Then we'll try together." "You'd come with me?" "Where else would I be?" Rowan stood too, and suddenly they were close, closer than they'd been before. Clara could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the scar above his left eyebrow she'd never asked about. "Clara," he said, his voice rough. "Yeah?" "I don't know how to say this without sounding." "Then don't say it." She kissed him, simple, direct, honest. And after a moment's hesitation, Rowan kissed her back, his hands coming up to frame her face like she was something precious. When they pulled apart, both breathing harder, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. "Took you long enough," Clara murmured. A startled laugh broke from his chest. "Was waiting for the right moment. And I got tired of waiting." They stood like that, wrapped in each other, the garden forgotten around them. The decision to go to town wasn't made lightly. They discussed it over several days, weighing risks and benefits. What they would say. How they would act. Whether it was worth the potential cost. In the end, Clara made the argument that decided it. "You can't build a life in fear," she said, "and that's what this is. Fear dressed up as caution. You want to move forward, then you have to stop letting them hold you back." So they went. The trail down felt different than it had going up. Clara walked beside Rowan this time, not behind him. They didn't talk much, but their hands brushed occasionally, a reminder of shared purpose. When they emerged at the edge of town, Clara saw Rowan's shoulders tense, his jaw set. "Hey," she said quietly. "You're not alone." He nodded, didn't speak, but his hand found hers and held on tight. They walked down the main street together. It was market day, and people crowded the square, farmers selling produce, women buying cloth, children running between stalls. The first person to see them was Mrs. Chen, who ran the fabric shop. Her eyes went wide, and she said something to the woman next to her. Like a ripple spreading across water, the news passed from person to person. Rowan Hale was back. Conversations died. People stopped and stared. Some with curiosity, some with hostility, some with something that might have been shame. Rowan kept walking, his face a mask. Clara matched his stride, her chin up, refusing to shrink under the weight of all those eyes. They made it to Millard's general store before anyone actually spoke. The clerk, the same thin man with spectacles, came around the counter, his expression complicated. "Rowan," he said. "Henry," Rowan's voice was flat. "We need supplies." "Sure, of course." Henry glanced at Clara. "Miss Whitmore, you're still... You stayed." "I did." "Right. Well," he cleared his throat. "What can I get you?" They gave him a list: flour, sugar, salt, coffee, basic staples. Henry gathered everything with nervous efficiency, clearly uncomfortable but trying. As he tallied the cost, the door opened behind them. Clara turned to see a man in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a star on his vest. The sheriff. "Rowan," he said. Not friendly, but not hostile either. "Been a while?" "Sheriff Dalton." "Heard you were living up on the ridge still." "You heard right." Dalton's eyes moved to Clara. "And you are?" "Clara Whitmore." "She's with me," Rowan said, an edge to the words. "Figured as much." Dalton hooked his thumbs in his belt. "People are talking. People always talk." "True enough." The sheriff paused. "Look, I know there's bad blood. Know what happened wasn't fair to you, but you coming back like this, walking around town, it's going to stir things up." "I'm not here to stir anything," Rowan said. "I'm here to buy supplies and leave." "That all?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "What do you want me to say, Sheriff? That I'll keep hiding on that mountain so the good people of Coldwater Bluff don't have to feel uncomfortable? That I'll stay invisible so everyone can keep pretending they didn't destroy my life over a lie? That's not—" "It is exactly that." Rowan's voice was low, controlled, but Clara could hear the anger beneath it. "You cleared me, Sheriff, found the real culprit. But that didn't fix what was broken, didn't give me back what I lost. So don't stand there and tell me I'm the problem for showing my face." Dalton had the grace to look uncomfortable. "You're right. I'm sorry. What happened to you?" He shook his head. It wasn't justice. Not the kind that matters. The admission hung in the air, surprising in its honesty. "Doesn't change anything," Rowan said. "No, but maybe it's a start." They left the store with their supplies, the sheriff's words following them out into the sunlight. Clara could feel the town watching, judging, speculating, but she kept her head high and her hand in Rowan's. They were halfway to the trail when a voice called out, "Hail!" Both of them stopped. A man was approaching, younger, maybe 30, with blonde hair and a nervous energy. "Jacob Pritchard," Rowan said quietly. "The son, the one who'd actually started the fire." "I need to talk to you," Jacob said, stopping a few feet away. "We've got nothing to say. Please, just 5 minutes." Rowan looked at Clara, who nodded slightly. They didn't have to do this, but maybe they should. 5 minutes, Rowan said. Jacob glanced around, clearly aware of the attention they were drawing. "Not here. Can we—" "There's an alley behind the mercantile." They followed him, Clara's instincts on alert. But when they reached the relative privacy of the narrow space between buildings, Jacob just stood there, hands shaking. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I can't take back what I did, but I need you to hear it. I'm sorry." Rowan's expression was unreadable. "You're sorry. I was angry. At my father, at the world, at everything. And you were there, and it was easy to point the finger, easy to let you take the fall." Jacob's voice cracked. "I told myself it didn't matter, that you were strong, that you'd be fine, but I destroyed your life. I know that now." "You did?" Rowan agreed. "And saying sorry doesn't fix it." "I know, but I had to try. I had to—" Jacob looked at the ground. "I've been carrying this for 3 years. The guilt, the shame. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I see what I did. I understand what I took from you." Clara watched Rowan's face, saw the war happening behind his eyes. This was the man who'd ruined him, who'd stolen his life and let him suffer. But this was also just a kid who'd made a terrible mistake and had to live with it. "I appreciate you telling me," Rowan said finally, "but appreciation isn't forgiveness. I'm not there yet. Don't know if I ever will be." "I understand." "Good." Rowan turned to leave, then stopped. "Jacob?" "Yeah?" "You carrying that guilt? That shame? Good. You should. Maybe it'll keep you from doing something like that again." Jacob nodded, eyes wet. "It will. I promise it will." They left him there and walked back toward the trail, neither of them speaking until they were well away from town. "You okay?" Clara asked. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." "Fair enough." They climbed in silence, the weight of the day settling over them like the coming dusk. When they reached the house, Rowan set down the supplies and went straight to the woodpile, grabbing the axe. Clara watched as he split log after log, working with a fierce, focused energy. She didn't try to stop him, didn't say anything, just let him work it out. When he finally stopped, sweating and breathing hard, she brought him water. "Thanks," he said, drinking deep. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really, but I probably should." They sat on the porch steps, the evening air cool against their skin. "I thought I'd be angrier," Rowan said, seeing him, hearing him apologize. "I thought I'd want to hit him, but I just felt tired." "Anger takes energy." "Yeah, and I'm tired of giving him that much of myself." Rowan looked at her. "He doesn't get to live in my head anymore. Doesn't get to define who I am." "No," Clara agreed. "He doesn't. It's strange. I came up here to hide from them. And you came up here to find me. And now we're figuring out what comes next. Together. Together." Rowan took her hand, pressed it to his lips. "I love you. I should have said it before. Should have said it weeks ago. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Clara Whitmore." Tears pricked Clara's eyes. "I love you too." They sat like that as the sun set, as the stars came out, as the mountain settled into its ancient rhythms around them. The past wasn't gone. The scars weren't healed, but they were moving forward, and that, Clara thought, was enough. For now, it was more than enough. The next morning brought rain, cold, persistent, the kind that seeped through everything. Clara woke to the sound of it drumming against the roof, a steady rhythm that filled the small house. Rowan was already up, standing by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the water stream down the glass. "Sleep okay?" he asked without turning. "Better than I expected." Clara sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. The air held a damp chill despite the fire burning low in the stove. "You? Good enough." She could tell by the set of his shoulders that he was lying, but she didn't push. Yesterday had been a lot. The trip to town, the confrontation with Jacob, all those eyes watching and judging. Some things needed time to settle. Clara joined him at the window, accepted the second cup of coffee he'd already poured for her. Outside, the clearing had turned to mud, the trees dripping and gray. "We're stuck inside today," Rowan said. "Rain like this, the trail'll be a mess. Not safe." "That's fine, there's plenty to do here." "Like what?" Clara gestured around the small house. "When's the last time you properly organized this place? Those shelves are a disaster, and I notice the door sticks when it's humid. Probably needs the hinges adjusted." Rowan's mouth twitched. "You planning to fix everything that's broken?" "Just the things I can reach." He turned to look at her then, something soft in his expression. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Nothing. That's the point." Clara set down her cup, moved closer. "You don't have to earn this, Rowan. You don't have to be perfect or fixed or anything other than what you are." "And what am I?" "Mine." The word came out bold, certain. "If you'll have me." Rowan reached for her, pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Yeah, I'll have you." They stood like that while the rain continued its assault on the roof, two people holding on to each other against everything the world had thrown at them. Eventually, Clara pulled back. "Come on, let's tackle those shelves before I lose my nerve." They spent the morning reorganizing, moving canned goods, checking dates, consolidating supplies. It was mindless work, the kind that let them talk without the pressure of eye contact. "Tell me about Philadelphia," Rowan said as he handed her jars of preserves. "You mentioned the boarding house, but what was it like? The city?" Clara paused, a jar of peaches in her hand. "Loud, crowded. Everything moved fast, and if you didn't keep up, you got left behind. I worked in a textile factory for 2 years, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. The noise from the machines was so constant that when I'd leave, my ears would ring for hours." "Sounds awful." "It was, but it was also," she searched for the right word, "alive." There were theaters and restaurants and people from everywhere. You could walk down one street and hear 5 different languages. I'd never seen anything like it. "Why'd you leave?" Clara was quiet for a moment, arranging jars with more care than necessary. "There was a man, Mr. Brennan. He owned the factory where I worked, started paying attention to me about a year in, compliments at first, then gifts I couldn't accept, then implications that my job might depend on being receptive to his interest." Rowan's jaw tightened. "What happened?" "I told him no, clearly, publicly. He didn't take it well. Clara's voice went flat. I lost my job the next day, blacklisted from the other factories too. He had connections. Suddenly I couldn't find work anywhere. Had to leave the boarding house because I couldn't pay rent. Ended up in a charity shelter for a while, which was... She shook her head. I learned real fast that being principled doesn't keep you fed. How'd you get out? Took whatever jobs I could find. Washing dishes, cleaning houses, mending clothes. Saved every penny for months. Finally had enough to get a room in a different part of the city, somewhere Brennan's influence didn't reach. Found work in a bakery. It paid less, but it was honest. Clara looked at Rowan. That's when I saw your advertisement, and I thought, here's a man asking for honesty. Not perfection, not submission, just honesty. And you answered. And I answered. She handed him the jar of peaches. Best decision I ever made. Rowan set the jar on the shelf, then turned to face her fully. You never told me that part. About Brennan. Didn't seem relevant. It's relevant to me. His hands curled into fists. Man like that should what? Face consequences? Clara laughed, but it held no humor. Men like Brennan don't face consequences. They have money, power, connections. They do what they want, and the rest of us just survive it. That's not right. No, but it's real. She touched his arm. I'm not telling you this to make you angry. I'm telling you because you asked who I was before I came here. That's part of it. The woman who learned that fighting back costs you everything, but not fighting costs you more. Rowan pulled her close again, fierce and protective. He ever comes near you? He won't. I'm up a mountain in a town he's never heard of, with a man who'd probably kill him if he tried. Clara felt Rowan tense. I'm joking, mostly. I wouldn't kill him. A pause. Might break a few things, though. My hero. They finished the shelves in comfortable silence, then moved on to the door. Rowan pulled it off its hinges with practiced ease while Clara watched, handing him tools when he needed them. You're good at this, she observed. Building things, fixing things. Had to be. Living alone up here, there's no one else to do it. Did you always want to live in the mountains? Rowan shrugged, using a plane to shave down where the wood had swollen. Not always. When I was younger, I thought I'd leave Coldwater Bluff. See other places. Maybe become a carpenter, work in one of the bigger towns. He tested the door, shaved a bit more. But then my father got sick. Someone had to run his trap lines, maintain the property he had up here. By the time he passed, I was already settled into the routine. You miss him? Every day. Rowan's voice went rough. He was a hard man. Didn't say much, didn't show affection easy, but he was fair. Taught me everything I know about surviving, about being self-sufficient. Sounds like a good father. He was. Not perfect, but good. Rowan fitted the door back into place, tested the swing. Smooth now, no sticking. There. That should hold. Clara admired his work. What would he think? About all this? About me? He'd like you. Probably tell me I was punching above my weight. You are. Rowan shot her a look. Getting cocky, aren't you? Just honest. You said you wanted honesty. Careful what you wish for, right? They made lunch together. Soup from vegetables Clara had stored, bread Rowan had baked 2 days ago. The rain continued outside, relentless, turning the world beyond the windows into watercolor blurs. Can I ask you something? Clara said as they ate. Seems to be the theme today. When you wrote that first letter, the one answering my response to the advertisement, what made you actually send it? You could have just written it and thrown it away. Rowan considered this, spooning soup slowly. I almost did. Wrote 3 different versions, actually. First one was too formal, like a business transaction. Second one was too desperate, I guess. Made me sound pathetic. And the third? The third was honest. Said I lived on a mountain. Said I'd been accused of something I didn't do. Said I wasn't looking for pity or rescue, just someone who might understand what it meant to choose a hard path. He met her eyes. I figured if that scared you off, better to know early. It didn't scare me. It made me want to know more. Why? Clara set down her spoon. Because everyone else was advertising for perfect wives. Women who could cook and clean and keep quiet. Women who'd be grateful for any man who'd have them. And here you were, basically saying, my life is difficult and isolated and possibly dangerous, and I'm not going to lie about that. It was refreshing. Most people would call it stupid. Most people are afraid of the truth. And you're not? I'm terrified of it. But I'd rather be terrified and honest than comfortable and lying. Rowan reached across the table, took her hand. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Yeah, we really are. The afternoon stretched long and gray. They read, Clara working through a collection of essays Rowan had, him tackling a manual on advanced carpentry. The fire crackled, the rain drummed. It was peaceful in a way Clara had never experienced before, this quiet domesticity. Around dinner time, Rowan stood and stretched, his back popping. I need to check on something in the shed. You okay here? I'll start on dinner. He pulled on his coat, darted out into the rain. Clara watched through the window as he disappeared into the shed, then turned to the task of preparing their meal. She was chopping carrots when the first crack of thunder rolled across the mountain, then another, closer. The rain intensified, going from steady to violent in seconds. Clara moved to the window, worried. Lightning flashed, illuminating the clearing in stark white. She couldn't see the shed clearly through the downpour. Minutes passed. 5. 10. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Just as Clara was debating whether to go check on him, the door burst open. Rowan stumbled in, soaked through, something large and dark draped over his shoulders. Help me, he said, and Clara realized what he was carrying. A dog. Massive, black and brown, barely conscious. What? Where did... Found him collapsed near the shed. Think he's been out there a while. Rowan laid the animal carefully on the floor near the fire. Get me towels, and that old blanket from the chest. Clara moved fast, grabbing what he needed. Up close, she could see the dog was in bad shape. Ribs showing, fur matted with mud and blood, one ear torn. Is he dying? She asked. Not if I can help it. Rowan's hands moved over the dog with surprising gentleness, checking for injuries. Looks like he got in a fight, maybe with a bear, based on these claw marks. Lost, probably. Been wandering. Can we save him? Don't know yet. Rowan found a gash along the dog's side, deep but not fatal. Get me the medical kit. Top shelf, left side. Clara retrieved it. A battered tin box filled with bandages, thread, alcohol. Rowan cleaned the wound, working with steady precision while the dog whimpered but didn't fight. Easy, boy, Rowan murmured. Easy. You're safe now. Clara helped where she could, holding the dog's head, keeping him still. The animal's eyes found hers, dark, intelligent, filled with pain, and something that might have been trust. You're going to be okay, she told him. We've got you. It took over an hour to tend all the injuries, clean the matted fur, get the dog warm and dry. By the time they finished, both Clara and Rowan were exhausted, covered in mud and blood. The dog lay by the fire, wrapped in the blanket, breathing steadily. Not out of danger yet, but stable. Will he make it through the night? Clara asked. Maybe. He's strong. Fought hard to get this far. Rowan washed his hands in the basin, scrubbing at the blood. We'll take turns watching him. Make sure he doesn't take a bad turn. You're good at this. Had to patch myself up enough times. Animals aren't that different. They ate a late dinner, both of them keeping an eye on their unexpected guest. The dog slept, his breathing evening out as the warmth and care worked their magic. What if he belongs to someone? Clara asked. No collar, no brands, and he's too wild to be from town. I'd recognize him. Rowan glanced at the animal. More likely he's been living rough for a while. Some dogs go feral, can't handle being around people. Others just get lost and never find their way back. But he came to you. Came to shelter. Probably smelled the smoke, knew fire meant people, took a chance. Clara looked at the dog, then at Rowan. We should keep him. Clara, I'm serious. Look at him. He needs us. And maybe, she hesitated, maybe we need him too. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. A dog's a responsibility. Food, care, training can't just decide on a whim. This isn't a whim. This is recognizing when something's meant to be. You believe in that? Meant to be? I believe in second chances. I believe in taking in strays. Clara smiled. After all, you took me in. That's different. Is it? Rowan looked at the dog again, something softening in his face. If he makes it through the night, we'll see. One step at a time. Fair enough. Clara took the first watch, sitting by the fire with a book she didn't really read. The dog stirred occasionally, whimpering in his sleep. Each time Clara reached out, stroked his head gently, whispered reassurances. Around midnight, Rowan emerged from where he'd been dozing on the bed. "I'll take over. You need rest." "I'm okay." "Clara?" She relented, too tired to argue. Rowan took her spot, and she crawled into bed still wearing most of her clothes, too exhausted to change properly. She woke once in the deep hours of night, surfaced just enough to see Rowan still sitting vigil. He had one hand resting on the dog's side, feeling the rise and fall of breath. The firelight caught his face, and she saw worry there, care, the kind of tenderness he tried so hard to hide. Clara closed her eyes and drifted back under, feeling safer than she had in years. Morning came gray but dry, the storm having passed in the night. Clara woke to find Rowan asleep in the chair, head tilted at an uncomfortable angle, and the dog, awake, watching her with alert dark eyes. "Hey there," she whispered, not wanting to startle either of them. The dog's tail moved, just slightly, but it moved. Clara eased out of bed, approached slowly. The dog watched but didn't growl, didn't cower. She knelt beside him, offered her hand. After a moment's hesitation, he sniffed it, then licked her fingers once. "You made it," she said softly. "Good boy. Such a good boy." The small noise of approval woke Rowan. He jerked upright, immediately focused on the dog. "He's awake," Clara said unnecessarily. Rowan leaned forward, checked the bandages, felt for fever. Infection's the risk now, but he's got fight in him. He met the dog's eyes. "Don't you, boy?" The tail wagged again, stronger this time. "We need to feed him," Clara said. "Something gentle. Broth, maybe?" "I'll make it." Rowan stood, wincing as his back protested, sleeping in the chair. "You stay with him. Keep him calm." Clara settled in, talking to the dog in low, soothing tones while Rowan worked at the stove. She told the dog about the mountain, about the house, about how he was safe now. The dog listened with what seemed like real attention, his eyes never leaving her face. When the broth was ready, they tried to get him to drink. It took patience. He was weak, disoriented, but eventually he managed a few laps. Not much, but something. "That's good," Rowan said. "We'll try again in a few hours. Small amounts, frequent. Don't want to overwhelm his system." Over the next few days, the dog improved steadily. By the third day, he could stand, though shakily. By the fifth, he was eating solid food, and by the end of the week, he was following Clara around the house, his eyes tracking her every movement. "He's attached to you," Rowan observed one morning. "I'm attached to him." Clara scratched behind the dog's good ear. "We need to name him." "Don't name him. Makes it harder if..." "If what? If we have to let him go?" Clara shook her head. "He's not going anywhere, and neither are we, so he needs a name." Rowan sighed, but she could see him wavering. "What do you want to call him?" Clara studied the dog. Big, dark, strong, despite his ordeal. "Bear, because he survived one, and he's tough as one." "Bear!" Rowan tried it out. The dog's ears perked up. "Huh, he likes it. Then it's settled. Bear!" The dog, Bear now, wagged his tail and pressed against Clara's leg, nearly knocking her over. She laughed, ruffling his fur, and caught Rowan watching them with an expression she couldn't quite name. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just, you're good with him." "He's easy to be good with. Still." Rowan moved closer, dropped a kiss on top of her head. "You've got a gift for finding broken things and making them whole. Takes one to know one." Bear barked, his first real bark since arriving, and they both startled, then laughed. The sound filled the small house, pushing back against years of silence. Life settled into new rhythms. Bear's presence changed things in small but significant ways. There was someone else to care for, to consider, to include in their daily routines. Rowan built him a bed near the fire. Clara made sure he ate regularly, monitored his healing. They took him on short walks, gradually building his strength. And Bear, for his part, seemed to understand he'd been given a second chance. He was gentle with Clara, playful with Rowan, fiercely protective of them both. When strangers approached, rare, but it happened, Bear would position himself between them and his people, not aggressive, but watchful. "He's a good judge of character," Rowan said after a traveling merchant had come asking for directions and Bear had growled low in his throat the entire time. You think the merchant was bad news? I think Bear thought so. And I trust his instincts. 2 weeks after finding Bear, Clara woke to discover both man and dog missing. She found a note on the table in Rowan's rough handwriting. Gone to check the far trap line. Back by noon. Don't worry. The last part made her smile. Of course she'd worry. That was half of loving someone, carrying them with you even when they weren't there. She used the alone time to work on a project she'd been planning. Using fabric scraps and old clothes, she started sewing curtains for the windows. The house could use more color, more softness, more signs that it was a home, not just a shelter. She was measuring the second window when she heard voices outside. Not Rowan. These were unfamiliar, multiple people. Clara moved to the door, opened it cautiously. 3 men stood at the edge of the clearing, clearly having just climbed the trail. She recognized one of them, Henry from the general store. The other 2 were strangers. "Miss Whitmore," Henry called out, staying where he was. Smart. Approaching uninvited felt like a violation this far from town. "We're looking for Rowan. He here? He's out checking traps. Should be back soon." Clara stepped onto the porch, crossing her arms. "What's this about?" Henry glanced at his companions, uncomfortable. "There's been some trouble in town. We need to talk to him." "What kind of trouble?" "The Pritchard barn. There was another fire last night." Clara's stomach dropped. "And you think Rowan had something to do with it?" "No, I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Anger flared hot in her chest. "You came all the way up here, 3 of you, to what? Accuse him again? Haven't you people done enough?" "Miss Whitmore, please." "No." Clara came down the porch steps, fury making her bold. "You listen to me. Rowan was cleared, proven innocent, and yet here you are, first thing that goes wrong, coming to his door like he's guilty until proven otherwise." Again, one of the strangers, older with a permanent scowl, spoke up. "Fire happened around midnight. We just want to know where he was." "He was here, with me, all night." "You're sure about that?" "I'm his wife." The lie came out smooth, protective. They weren't married yet, but that was a technicality these men didn't need to know. "Of course I'm sure." Henry's eyebrows went up. "You married him?" "Is that a problem?" "No, just we hadn't heard. Maybe because it's none of your business." Clara held her ground. "Rowan was here last night. We ate dinner, went to bed, woke up together this morning. He's been gone maybe 2 hours to check traps. So unless you think he ran down the mountain, set a fire, and ran back up before dawn, you're wasting your time." The scowling man wasn't convinced. "Convenient. You saying exactly what he'd want you to say." "I'm saying the truth, which is more than you did for him 3 years ago." "Now hold on." "No, you hold on." Clara's voice shook with rage. "You all turned on him, assumed the worst, destroyed his life over something he didn't do. And when the truth came out, when his name was cleared, did any of you apologize? Did any of you try to make it right? No. You just let him disappear up here, let him live in exile, and convinced yourselves it was what he wanted. Well, it's not. He stays because he's too proud to run, but that doesn't mean he deserves this, any of this." Silence fell over the clearing. Henry looked ashamed. The other 2 just looked stubborn. "We still need to talk to him," the scowling man insisted. "Then wait." Clara pointed to a spot away from the house. "Over there. Don't come closer. And when he gets back, you'll ask your questions respectfully, or you'll leave. Understood?" They understood. Or at least they moved to where she'd indicated and settled in to wait. Clara went back inside, her hand shaking now that the confrontation was over. She'd never spoken to anyone like that, never defended someone so fiercely. But the thought of them coming here, accusing Rowan again, bringing all that pain back, it had unlocked something protective and fierce. An hour later, Bear's bark announced Rowan's return. Clara watched through the window as he emerged from the tree line, Rabbit slung over his shoulder, Bear trotting at his side. She saw the moment he spotted the 3 men, saw him stop, his whole body going tense. Clara hurried outside. "Rowan." He looked at her, and she saw fear there beneath the anger. Not fear of the men, but fear of what they represented, of history repeating. "What's going on?" he asked quietly. "Another fire at the Pritchard place last night. They came to ask where you were." His face went carefully blank. And you told them? I told them you were here, with me, all night. Something flickered in his eyes. Gratitude, relief, love. Then he turned to face the three men who were approaching now. Rowan, Henry started, we need to... I was here, Rowan cut him off. Clara's already told you. I was here all night. Got witnesses if you need more than her word. Witnesses? The scowling man scoffed. Who? Rowan gestured to Bear, who'd positioned himself between his people and the strangers, hackles slightly raised. He was awake most of the night, healing still. I sat with him. Clara can confirm. A dog's not a witness. Maybe not. But Clara is. And if you're calling her a liar, we're done talking. Henry held up his hands. Nobody's calling anyone a liar, Rowan. We just had to check. With your history, my history of being falsely accused and proven innocent, Rowan's voice was cold. That history? It's just people talk. When something happens, your name comes up. Then people need to learn to shut their mouths. Clara stepped up beside Rowan, shoulder to shoulder. Unless you have actual evidence, unless you have any real reason to be here beyond gossip and old prejudice, I suggest you leave. The scowling man bristled. You can't. This is private property, Rowan said flatly, and you're not welcome on it. So, yeah, leave. Henry looked between them, seemed to make a decision. All right, we'll go. But Rowan, this is going to keep happening unless whoever's really doing it gets caught. You understand that, right? I understand you've got a problem in town that's not my responsibility to solve. Fair enough. Henry turned to his companions. Come on. We're done here. They left, disappearing back down the trail. Rowan and Clara stood together until they were sure the men were truly gone. Then Rowan turned to her. You called yourself my wife. I did. We're not married yet. Not officially. He pulled her close, fierce and sudden. Thank you for standing up for me, for sending them away. I'd do it again. I'd do it 100 times. I know. That's what scares me. Clara pulled back to look at him. What do you mean? You shouldn't have to defend me. Shouldn't have to lie for me. I didn't lie. You were here. You know what I mean. You're getting dragged into my mess, my past. It's not fair to you. Life isn't fair, Clara said simply. But I choose this. I choose you. And if that means dealing with small-minded people who can't let go of old accusations, then that's what I'll do. Rowan's jaw tightened. There's going to be more. More fires, more suspicion, more people coming up here. Then we'll handle it. Together. Clara, no. She took his face in her hands, made him look at her. You don't get to push me away because you think you're protecting me. I'm here. I'm staying. And whatever comes, we face it as a team. Understand? For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said roughly. Okay. They went inside together, Bear following close. The curtain fabric still lay across the table where Clara had left it, bright against the worn wood. Rowan picked up a piece, rubbed it between his fingers. What's this? Curtains. I thought the place could use some. Curtains. He said it like he'd never heard the word before. For the windows. That's generally where they go, yes. Rowan set the fabric down carefully. This place has never had curtains. Well, it does now. Or it will, once I finish them. He looked around the house, at the organized shelves, the fixed door, the dog bed by the fire, the fabric waiting to become something beautiful. You're really settling in, aren't you? Making this a home. Is that okay? It's more than okay. His voice went thick. It's everything. They spent the rest of the day in comfortable routine. Clara worked on the curtains while Rowan prepared the rabbits he'd caught. Bear dozed between them, content. Outside, the mountains settled into afternoon quiet, the earlier tension bleeding away. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Rowan said, We should get married. Officially. Clara looked up from her plate. Is this a proposal? It's a statement of intent. We've been dancing around it for weeks. Might as well make it real. That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. You want romance? Fine. Rowan set down his fork, took her hand. Clara Whitmore, you're the most stubborn, brave, infuriating woman I've ever met. You walked up a mountain to marry a man you'd never seen. You've defended me, challenged me, and somehow made this prison of a house feel like a home. I don't have much to offer, just this place, this life, and me. But if you'll have it, if you'll have me, I'd like to make you my wife. For real this time, no pretending. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. That's better. So is that a yes? Of course it's a yes, you idiot. Rowan laughed, a real full laugh that lit up his whole face. He stood, pulled her up with him, kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Clara said, "When?" "Soon, before winter really sets in, before anything else can happen to stop it." "Nothing's going to stop it." "I know, but I'm not taking chances." They made plans over the next few days. It would be simple. No church, no big ceremony. Just them, the mountain, and whatever officiant they could find willing to make the climb. Henry, when they asked him during their next trip to town, looked surprised but pleased. "I know a traveling preacher, comes through once a month. Could probably convince him to make a special trip." "We'd appreciate that," Clara said. "When were you thinking?" 2 weeks. Gives us time to prepare." Henry nodded slowly. "People will talk, about you marrying him, about what it means." "Let them talk," Clara said evenly. "We're done caring what people think." Word spread through town faster than Clara expected. By the time they left the general store, she could feel eyes on them everywhere. Some curious, some disapproving, a few that might have been sympathetic. "Ignore them," Rowan muttered, hand tight on hers. "I am." But it was hard. Harder than she'd expected. These people didn't know her, didn't know them, yet they'd already decided what this marriage meant. Another mistake. Another scandal. They were almost to the trail when a woman called out, "Miss Whitmore!" Clara turned to find an older woman approaching, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She didn't recognize her. "Yes?" The woman stopped a respectful distance away. "I'm Margaret Chen. I run the fabric shop." "I remember. From market day. I wanted to say—" Margaret paused, choosing her words carefully. "What you're doing, marrying Rowan despite everything. It takes courage. More than most people have." Clara wasn't sure how to respond to that. Margaret continued, "My husband was accused of theft 20 years ago. He didn't do it, but the accusation stuck. Followed him until he died. I know what it's like, living under that shadow. So I wanted you to know, not everyone in this town is against you. Some of us understand." "Thank you," Clara managed. Margaret nodded, then surprised them both by addressing Rowan directly. "You deserve happiness, son. Don't let anyone tell you different." She walked away before either of them could respond, disappearing into the flow of townspeople. Rowan stood very still, his face unreadable. "That was unexpected," Clara said quietly. "Yeah." His voice was rough. It was. They walked back up the mountain in silence, both processing. Clara thought about Margaret's words, about the courage it had taken for her to approach them publicly, about the small crack in the wall of judgment that surrounded Rowan. Maybe things could change. Maybe not quickly, maybe not easily, but maybe. Back at the house, they threw themselves into wedding preparations. Rowan cleaned and organized with unusual intensity. Clara finished the curtains, hung them, then started on making herself a proper dress from fabric she'd bought in town. "You don't have to do all this," Rowan said, watching her work. "I want to. I want to look nice when we do this. You always look nice." "Sweet talker," he grinned. "I have my moments." The days passed quickly. The traveling preacher confirmed he'd come. They planned a simple meal afterward, nothing fancy, just good food and maybe some of the whiskey Rowan kept hidden in the back of a cabinet. 3 days before the wedding, Sheriff Dalton came up the mountain. Alone this time, hands visible and empty as he approached. "Rowan, Clara." "Sheriff." Rowan's voice was wary. "Something wrong?" "No, opposite, actually." Dalton pulled out a piece of paper. "We caught who's been setting the fires. Kid named Thomas Merrick. 17, got himself into some trouble gambling. Thought insurance fraud was the answer. Confessed this morning." Clara felt relief wash over her. "So it's over. The fire setting is—" "But Rowan—" Dalton looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to apologize. Properly. For coming up here with accusations. For not trusting Clara's word right off. And for—" he gestured vaguely, Everything that happened 3 years ago, the way you were treated, the way I let it happen. Rowan was very quiet. I should have fought harder for you, Dalton continued. Should have pushed back when people assumed the worst. Should have done a lot of things different. And I'm sorry, for what it's worth. It's worth something, Rowan said finally. Not everything, but something. Dalton nodded. That's fair. Anyway, I'll let you get back to your life. He started to turn, then stopped. Heard you two are getting married. Word travels fast. It's a small town. For what it's worth, congratulations. You deserve some happiness. After he left, Rowan sat on the porch steps, staring out at nothing. Clara joined him, waited. 2 apologies in 1 week, he said eventually, from people who spent 3 years pretending I didn't exist. Better late than never? Maybe. Or maybe they just feel guilty now that someone else got caught. Eases their conscience to say sorry. Clara considered this. Does it matter why they're apologizing if it's real? I don't know. Rowan rubbed his face. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. Part of me just wants to move on. Then move on. You don't owe them forgiveness, but you don't owe them anger either. You can just let it be what it is and focus on what's ahead. He looked at her. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just now noticing. Rowan pulled her close, kissed her temple. 3 more days. 3 more days, Clara agreed. And then they'd be married, officially and irrevocably bound together. Not because they had to be, not because it was expected or convenient, but because they chose it, because despite everything, the scandal, the isolation, the hard life on a mountain, they'd found something worth fighting for, each other. The morning of the wedding dawned cold and clear, the kind of autumn day where the sky looked like it had been scrubbed clean. Clara woke before sunrise, too nervous to sleep, and found Rowan already awake, standing by the window with Bear pressed against his leg. You having second thoughts? She asked quietly. He turned, and she saw the answer in his face before he spoke. No, you. Not even close. Then why are we both awake at 4 a.m? Clara moved to join him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the chill. Because it's a big day. Because we're nervous, because that's normal. I don't do nervous well. I've noticed. They stood together watching the darkness slowly give way to gray, then pink, then gold. The mountain emerged from shadow piece by piece, revealing itself in the growing light. My father got married on a day like this, Rowan said. Clear, cold, perfect. He told me once that he knew the minute he saw my mother walk toward him that he'd made the right choice. That everything before that moment had just been leading him there. Clara leaned against his shoulder. You miss them both. Every day, but especially today. His voice went rough. Wish they could be here. Wish they could meet you. They'd like me, right? My mother would have loved you, would have told me I was lucky and didn't deserve you. A small smile. My father would have just nodded and said, she'll do, which, coming from him, was high praise. I'll take it. Rowan pulled her closer. They would have been proud of this, of us finding each other despite everything. We found each other because of everything, Clara corrected. The hard parts made us who we are. Yeah, I guess they did. They made breakfast together as the sun climbed higher. Eggs from the hens Clara had convinced Rowan to get 2 weeks ago, bread, coffee, strong enough to strip paint. Neither of them ate much. Too many nerves, too much anticipation. The preacher was due at noon. That left hours to fill, hours to get ready, hours to second-guess and worry and wonder if they were doing this right. Clara retreated to work on her dress, simple cream-colored fabric she'd sewn herself, nothing fancy but clean and new. She'd never been the kind of woman who dreamed about wedding dresses, but standing in front of the small mirror Rowan had hung for her, adjusting the fit, she felt something shift in her chest. This was real. This was happening. A knock on the door frame made her turn. Rowan stood there, carefully not looking. I know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, he said. But that's only the dress, right? Can I talk to you? You're already talking to me. You know what I mean, Clara smiled. Yes, you can come in. Just don't look. He entered with his eyes fixed firmly on the floor, which would have been funny if he hadn't looked so serious. I need to tell you something, before we do this, before it's official. Clara's stomach tightened. Okay. When the fire happened, when I was accused, I told you they proved I was innocent, and they did. But what I didn't tell you is how close it came. How close I came to just giving up." He still wasn't looking at her, his hands clenched at his sides. The first month after the accusation, I was so angry I could barely think straight. Angry at Pritchard, at the sheriff, at the whole damn town. But then the anger burned itself out, and what was left was just empty. I'd wake up and think, what's the point? Why keep fighting when everyone's already decided I'm guilty? Clara stayed quiet, letting him talk. I came up here to the house one night with my father's rifle, sat on the porch with it across my lap, and seriously considered whether it was worth staying alive. If maybe it would be easier to just end it, let them have their villain, be done with it all. Clara's breath caught, but she didn't interrupt. I sat there for hours, had the barrel in my mouth twice, but I couldn't do it, not because I was brave or because I had hope, because I was too stubborn to give them the satisfaction. His voice cracked, and that's what saved me. Pure stubbornness, not wanting them to win. "Rowan, I need you to know that. Need you to know that the man you're marrying isn't some hero who survived through strength of character. I'm just too pig-headed to die. And there are still days when the emptiness comes back, when I wake up and think maybe it would be easier to just not be here anymore." Clara moved to him then, dress forgotten, and took his face in her hands, made him look at her. "Listen to me," she said fiercely. "I don't want a hero. I want you, the real you, the stubborn, difficult, scarred version who's been through hell and came out the other side. You think that makes you weak? It makes you human. It makes you real. But if those days come back, if I have moments where I can't see the point, then you tell me. You don't hide it. You don't carry it alone. You tell me and we figure it out together." Her grip tightened. "You hear me? Together." Rowan closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." A rough laugh escaped him. Yeah, I am. You can look now, by the way, at the dress." He opened his eyes, stepped back to take her in properly. Something in his expression softened, went tender in a way she rarely saw. "You look beautiful." "It's just a dress. It's not just anything." He reached out, touched the fabric carefully. "It's you choosing this, choosing us. That's everything." Clara kissed him, soft and sure. "Go get ready. Preacher will be here soon and you're still in your work clothes." "Yes, ma'am." He left, and Clara turned back to the mirror. Her reflection stared back. A woman she barely recognized. Stronger than she'd been 6 months ago. Braver. More certain of who she was and what she wanted. She thought about Rowan's confession, about how close he'd come to giving up. Part of her was angry he'd kept that from her for so long. But a larger part understood. Some truths were too heavy to share until you were sure the person hearing them wouldn't run. She wouldn't run. Not now. Not ever. By 11:30 they were both ready. Rowan had changed into his best clothes, still rough by city standards, but clean and carefully maintained. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair, looked almost civilized except for the wildness that would always live in his eyes. Clara wore her dress and the only jewelry she owned, a simple locket that had belonged to her mother. Bear had been brushed until his coat shone, though he seemed confused about why everyone was so tense. They waited on the porch, watching the trail. Minutes ticked by. Noon came and went. "He's late," Rowan said. "Give him time. It's a long climb." 12:30. 1 o'clock. Still no sign of the preacher. Rowan's jaw tightened with each passing minute. Clara could see him retreating inward, old defenses rising. "He's not coming," Rowan said finally. "You don't know that. I know how this works. He probably got to town, heard the gossip, decided he wanted no part of marrying a man like me. Rowan, it's fine. We don't need him. We don't need anyone." But it wasn't fine. Clara could hear the hurt beneath the anger, see the way his shoulders had drawn up tight. At 1:30, Bear started barking. They both turned to see a figure emerging from the trees, but it wasn't the preacher. It was Margaret Chen, the woman from the fabric shop, climbing steadily with a basket over her arm. She reached the clearing and stopped, breathing hard from the climb. "Sorry I'm late. Trail's harder than I remembered." Rowan and Clara exchanged confused looks. "Mrs. Chen," Clara started, "what are you doing here?" "Bringing you a wedding gift." Margaret held up the basket. "And possibly officiating, if you'll have me." "You're not the preacher," Rowan said. "No, but I'm authorized to perform marriages. Did it for years before my husband died, then let the certification lapse. Renewed it last week." She set the basket down. "The preacher you hired stopped in my shop this morning. Said he'd thought about it and decided he couldn't in good conscience marry a man of questionable character. His words, not mine." Rowan's face went flat. "Of course he did. So I told him he was a coward and a hypocrite, which he didn't appreciate. Then I went to the sheriff and had my certification rushed through. Figured you deserved to get married today, and I'd be honored to make it happen." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "You did that for us?" "I did it because it's right, and because my husband would have wanted me to." Margaret pulled out a worn book from the basket. "Now, are we doing this or not? I didn't climb a mountain for nothing." Rowan looked at Clara. She saw the question there, the uncertainty. "Yes," Clara said firmly. "We're doing this." They stood together on the porch, the mountains spread out behind them, Bear sitting alert at their feet. Margaret opened her book, but then paused. "Before we start, I should tell you, the whole town knows the preacher refused, and a good number of them think he was right to do it." She looked at Rowan. "But there are some of us who remember what it was like when my husband was accused, who remember how it feels to be judged for something you didn't do. We're not a majority, but we're here, and we're trying to do better." Rowan swallowed hard, nodded. Margaret began the ceremony. It was simple, traditional, the words worn smooth by centuries of use. But standing there, Clara felt the weight of them. The promise they represented, the choice they were making. "Do you, Rowan Hale, take Clara Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Rowan's voice came out steady and sure. "I do." "And do you, Clara Whitmore, take Rowan Hale to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Coldwater Bluff, I pronounce you husband and wife." Margaret closed her book. "You may kiss your bride." Rowan pulled Clara close and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Margaret was smiling. "Congratulations," she said. "You're officially married." They invited Margaret to stay for the meal Clara had prepared, and to everyone's surprise, she accepted. They ate together at the small table. Roasted chicken, vegetables from the garden, bread still warm from the oven. Margaret told stories about her husband, about their life together, about surviving when the world decided you weren't worth its time. "He died 5 years ago," she said. "Heart gave out one night while he slept. And you know what the hardest part was? Not the grief, though that was terrible. It was realizing that most of the town breathed easier with him gone, like they'd been waiting for him to leave so they could stop feeling guilty." "I'm sorry," Clara said. "Don't be. He lived well despite them. We both did. Built a good life, had a good marriage. That's more than most people get." Margaret looked between them. "And that's what you'll have too, if you fight for it. The hard parts don't go away, but you face them together, and that makes all the difference." As the afternoon wore into evening, Margaret finally stood to leave. "I should head back before it gets too dark." "You could stay," Clara offered. "We have space. I appreciate it, but I've got the shop to open tomorrow. Besides, you two should have your first night as a married couple to yourselves." She winked, which made Rowan look uncomfortable and Clara laugh. They walked her to the edge of the clearing. Before she started down the trail, Margaret turned back. "One more thing. There's talk in town about starting a community council. Something to address grievances, handle conflicts before they get out of hand. Sheriff Dalton's pushing for it, and I've agreed to be on it." She looked at Rowan. "I'd like you to consider joining too." Rowan stared at her. "You're joking." "I'm not. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. And maybe if you're part of the process, others will start seeing you as part of the community again, instead of the outsider they can blame." "They'd never accept me." "Some wouldn't, but some would. And that's a start." Margaret didn't push, just let it sit. "Think about it. Offers open." She disappeared down the trail, leaving them standing in the gathering dusk. "A council," Rowan said. "She wants me on a council. Would you do it?" "I don't know. Maybe. Feels like inviting more trouble. Or maybe it's a way to stop running from it." Rowan looked at her. You think I should do it? I think you should do whatever feels right. But yeah, I think it might be good, might help people see you differently. I'm tired of caring what people think. I know, but this wouldn't be about them. It'd be about you. About choosing to be part of something instead of apart from it. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll think about it. They went inside where the fire had burned low and the house felt warm and safe. Clara changed out of her wedding dress carefully, hanging it up with more care than it probably deserved. When she emerged, Rowan had poured 2 glasses of whiskey. To us, he said, handing her one. To us, Clara echoed. They drank, the liquor burning smooth and warm. Then Rowan set down his glass and pulled Clara close. I need to tell you something else, he said. Something I should have said earlier but couldn't find the words. More confessions? More honesty. He took a breath. You asked me once why I put that advertisement in the paper. And I told you it was because the silence was eating me alive. But that wasn't the whole truth. Clara waited. The truth is, I was disappearing. Bit by bit, day by day, I was becoming less of a person and more of a ghost. I'd go weeks without speaking out loud, weeks without seeing another human, and I could feel myself forgetting how to be human, how to care about anything beyond basic survival. His hands tightened on her shoulders. That advertisement was a lifeline I threw out into the void, not knowing if anyone would grab it, not really believing anyone would. And then you wrote back. And your letters, they reminded me what it felt like to be seen, to be known, to matter to someone. Rowan, I'm not finished. You saved my life, Clara. Not in some dramatic, immediate way. But slowly, letter by letter, day by day, you pulled me back from the edge. And I need you to know that. Need you to understand that whatever happens from here, you've already given me more than I ever thought I'd have again. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. You saved mine too. You just didn't know it. How? I was so tired of being small, of making myself invisible to survive, of accepting whatever scraps the world threw my way and being grateful for them. And then I read your letter, that first one, where you said you weren't looking for someone to save you or fix you, just someone who could stand beside you. And I realized I'd been looking for that too. Someone who wanted a partner, not a servant. Someone who saw me as an equal. She kissed him, tasting salt and whiskey. We saved each other, she said. That's how this works. They made love for the first time as husband and wife, slow and tender, learning each other in ways letters could never convey. And afterward, lying tangled together in the narrow bed, Clara felt something settle deep in her bones. This was home, not the house, not the mountain, but this, being held by someone who knew her completely and chose her anyway. The next weeks passed in a blur of routine and adjustment. Being married didn't change much on the surface. They still woke early, still worked hard, still fell into bed exhausted most nights. But underneath, everything was different. There was permanence now. A commitment that went beyond letters and promises. They were bound together, for better or worse, and that knowledge colored everything. Rowan did accept Margaret's offer to join the council, though he agonized over the decision for days first. His first meeting was tense. Clara insisted on coming with him, and they walked into the town hall together to find a room full of familiar faces. Some welcoming, some hostile, most just curious. Sheriff Dalton ran the meeting with surprising efficiency. They discussed town maintenance, resolved a property dispute, debated whether to impose a curfew on unaccompanied minors. Normal, boring town business. Then Dalton turned to Rowan. You've been living on the mountain for 3 years now. You've got perspective the rest of us don't. Anything you want to bring to the table? Every eye turned to Rowan. Clara felt him tense beside her. The trail, he said finally. The main one up to the ridge. It's washing out in places. Storm damage. Someone's going to get hurt if it's not fixed. That trail hasn't been maintained in years, one of the council members said. Hardly anyone uses it. I use it. Clara uses it. And hunters use it during season. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not important. There was a brief silence. Then Margaret spoke up. Rowan's right. We should organize a work party. Fix it before winter really sets in. To Clara's surprise, several people nodded agreement. They voted, and the motion passed. A small thing, but Rowan looked stunned. They listened, he said as they walked home later. They actually listened. Of course they did. You made sense. That's never mattered before. Maybe things are changing. Maybe. The work party happened the following week. A dozen men and women showed up with tools and materials, and they spent a full day clearing debris, reinforcing weak spots, making the trail safe again. Rowan worked alongside them, quiet but present, and Clara watched as something shifted in how people looked at him. Not acceptance, not yet, but something closer to respect. That night, exhausted and dirty, they collapsed into bed together. "Today was good," Clara said. "It was strange. Strange good or strange bad? Just strange. I'm not used to people wanting me around. Get used to it. You're stuck with them now." Rowan pulled her close. "As long as I'm stuck with you too. Always." But even as things improved in some ways, old wounds remained. One afternoon, Clara was in town alone. Rowan was checking his trap lines when she overheard two women talking outside the general store. "I still say she's making a mistake," one of them said. "Marrying that man. What kind of life is that, stuck on a mountain with someone like him?" "Maybe she had no other options," the other replied. "You know what they say about women who answer those advertisements. Desperate." Clara felt heat rise in her face. She could walk away, pretend she hadn't heard, but she was tired of pretending. She stepped into view, both women startled. "I answered the advertisement," Clara said evenly, "because I wanted to, not because I was desperate, and I married Rowan because I love him, because he's a good man who was treated terribly by this town. If you have a problem with that, say it to my face. Don't hide behind gossip." One of the women had the grace to look ashamed. The other just lifted her chin defiantly. "You're entitled to your choices," she said, "but don't expect us to celebrate them." "I don't expect anything from you," Clara replied, "except maybe basic human decency, which clearly is too much to ask." She walked away before they could respond, her heart pounding. She'd never been confrontational like this before, never stood up for herself so directly. But something had changed in her over these months. She'd found her spine. When she told Rowan about it later, he looked worried. "You shouldn't antagonize them," he said. "It'll just make things harder." "Harder than what? Letting them talk about us like we're not real people? Letting them act like our marriage is some kind of tragedy?" Clara shook her head. "I'm done being quiet. If they want to judge us, they can do it to our faces." "Clara, but..." "No. You've spent 3 years hiding from their judgment. I'm not going to do the same. We're married. We're building a life. And if they can't handle that, it's their problem, not ours." Rowan stared at her, something like awe in his expression. "You're incredible, you know that? I'm just tired of being afraid." "You were never afraid." "I was. I am. But I'm more afraid of letting them win." Winter came early that year, hitting hard and fast. The first real storm caught them by surprise. 3 feet of snow in 2 days, winds that threatened to tear the roof off. They were trapped inside for a week, just them and Bear and the howling white void beyond the windows. But it was okay. Better than okay, actually. They had food, fuel, each other. They played cards and read and talked about things they'd never had time for before. Clara told Rowan about her childhood, about the mother she barely remembered who'd died when she was 5. Rowan told her about learning to hunt with his father, about the first deer he'd killed and how he'd cried over it. "I was 12, he said, "old enough to know it was necessary, but young enough to feel the weight of taking a life. My father didn't mock me for crying, just said it was good to feel it. Said the day I stopped feeling it was the day I'd need to worry." "Do you still feel it?" "Every time. Less than I did, but it's there. That recognition that I'm ending something that was alive." "That's not weakness." "I know. Took me a long time to understand that, though." On the 5th day of being trapped inside, cabin fever started setting in. They were both restless, snapping at each other over small things. Bear sensed the tension and stayed between them, watchful. "I need air," Rowan said, pulling on his coat. "You'll freeze." "Then I'll freeze. Better than staying cooped up in here." He stomped out and Clara let him go. She understood the need. Sometimes the walls got too close, the space too small. Sometimes you needed to step outside just to remember there was an outside. He came back 20 minutes later, snow-covered and shivering, but calmer. Clara had made coffee, strong and hot, and handed him a cup without a word. "Sorry," he said, "for being an ass." "You weren't. We're both going crazy." "Yeah." He sipped the coffee, warming his hands on the cup. Being married is harder than I thought it would be. Claire's stomach dropped. What? Not harder like I regret it. Harder like I'm not used to having someone see me when I'm at my worst. Not used to having to consider another person before I make decisions. It's an adjustment. Oh, yeah, it is. You ever regret it? Marrying me? Clara thought about it honestly. No, but there are moments when I miss having space that's just mine. When I wish I could be messy or cranky without worrying about how it affects you. Is that terrible? It's human. Rowan set down his cup, pulled her close. We're going to have moments like this. Times when we drive each other crazy. When the space feels too small and the winter too long, but we'll get through them. Promise? Promise. The storm finally broke on the 7th day, leaving the world transformed. Everything was white and pristine, the kind of beauty that made your chest ache. They dug themselves out slowly, clearing paths, checking on the animals, assessing damage. Roof held, Rowan announced, examining it from the ground. Chimney's fine. We made it through. First winter storm as a married couple, Clara said. One down. Who knows how many to go? At least 40 if we're lucky. 40 winters together. Clara tried to imagine it. 40 years of this. Work and struggle and quiet moments of grace. That sounds good. Yeah, it does. They spent the next weeks preparing for the worst of winter. Cutting more wood, preserving more food, reinforcing everything that could be reinforced. And in the evenings, they'd sit by the fire and talk about the future. I want to expand the garden next spring, Clara said one night. Maybe build a greenhouse. We could grow things year-round. We'd need glass. That's expensive. We could save for it. Or maybe find old windows, repurpose them. Rowan considered this. That could work. I've seen greenhouses like that. Not pretty, but functional. Who cares about pretty? I care about fresh vegetables in February. Fair point. He stretched out his legs toward the fire. What else? What else what? What else do you want? For the future. Clara was quiet for a moment, gathering courage. A family. Eventually. Not right away, but someday. I want kids. She felt Rowan tense beside her. Kids, he repeated. Do you not want that? I don't know. I've never really thought about it. Didn't seem like something that would happen for me. And now? Now I'm married to you, and I'm realizing there's a whole life ahead of us I never let myself imagine. He looked at her. Kids would be complicated. Up here, isolated. No school, no other children around. What kind of life is that for a kid? The kind where they grow up strong and self-sufficient, where they learn the value of hard work and the beauty of the natural world, where they're loved and wanted. What if I'm a terrible father? What if you're a wonderful one? Rowan shook his head. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's worth considering. He pulled her close. Okay, I'll consider it, but not tonight. Tonight I just want to sit here with you and pretend the world is exactly this small. Deal. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the wind picked up again, promising more snow. But inside, they were warm, they were safe, they were together. And for now, that was everything they needed. Spring arrived slowly that year, teasing them with warm days that would vanish overnight into freezing rain. Clara stood at the window one morning in late March, watching ice drip from the eaves, and realized something that made her heart skip. She was late. 2 weeks now, maybe 3. She'd been so caught up in surviving winter, in the daily routines of keeping warm and fed, that she hadn't noticed until now. Behind her, Rowan was stoking the fire, muttering about the inconsistent weather. Bear stretched out on his bed, yawning wide enough to show all his teeth. I need to go to town, Clara said. Rowan looked up. Now? Trail's probably a mess with all this melting. Soon. Today, if possible. Something in her tone made him pause. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I need to see Margaret at the fabric shop. Margaret? His brow furrowed. Why? Clara turned to face him, her hands unconsciously moving to her stomach. Because I think I might be pregnant, and I need to know for sure before I tell you. The words hung in the air between them. Rowan's face went through several expressions, surprise, fear, something that might have been hope, before settling on carefully neutral. "But you just told me," he said. "I know. I meant to wait until I was certain, but I'm terrible at keeping secrets from you." "How late are you?" "A few weeks. Could be nothing. Could be the stress of winter, or just my body being unpredictable. But I need to know." Rowan set down the poker, crossed to her. "We'll go together. Trail's manageable if we're careful." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. This affects both of us." He took her hands. "Are you scared?" "Terrified." "You?" "Same. But also," he paused, searching for words, "also wondering if maybe this is what's supposed to happen. If maybe we're ready, even if we don't feel like it." Clara leaned against him. "We talked about someday. Didn't think someday would come this fast. Life doesn't wait for us to be ready." They made the journey down the mountain together, Bear trotting ahead of them, testing the trail. The path was slick in places, treacherous where snowmelt had carved new channels. They moved slowly, Rowan keeping a steadying hand on Clara's elbow. Town was busier than Clara expected. The first warm spell always brought people out, eager to shake off winter's cabin fever. They drew looks as they walked through, more curious than hostile now, though there were still a few faces that hardened at the sight of Rowan. Margaret was arranging bolts of fabric when they entered her shop. She looked up, smiled, then caught the expression on Clara's face, and her smile shifted to something more knowing. "Clara, Rowan, come in the back." She led them to a small room behind the shop, closed the door. "You think you're pregnant. How did you—" "I've seen that look before. On my own face, 30 years ago." Margaret gestured for Clara to sit. "When was your last monthly?" Clara told her. Margaret asked more questions. Had she been sick in the mornings? Were her breasts tender? Was she more tired than usual? Clara answered each one, and with each answer, the reality became more concrete. "I'd say you're about 6 weeks along, maybe 7, Margaret said finally. "Hard to know for certain this early, but all the signs point to yes." Clara felt the floor tilt beneath her. Rowan's hand found hers, gripped tight. 6 weeks, Clara repeated. That's real. That's a baby." "That's a baby," Margaret confirmed. "Congratulations." "I don't know if congratulations is the right word," Rowan said. His face had gone pale. "We're not— the house isn't—" "The house will be fine," Margaret cut in. "Babies need warmth, food, and love. You've got all 3. Everything else you can figure out as you go." "What if something goes wrong?" Clara heard herself ask. "What if I can't? What if I'm not? Then you deal with it when it happens, but don't borrow trouble." Margaret's voice softened. "I lost 2 before I had my son. Carried him full term, and he died 3 days later. Worst pain of my life, but I don't regret any of it. Not the pregnancies, not the hope, not even the grief. It was all part of living." Clara felt tears start. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I'm telling you this so you know, whatever happens, you'll survive it, and you'll have Rowan beside you. That matters more than you think." They left the shop in a daze, walked through town barely seeing it, climbed back up the mountain on autopilot. It wasn't until they were back inside their own house, the door closed against the world, that the reality fully hit. Clara sank into a chair. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Rowan echoed. He looked shell-shocked. "I'm going to be a father." "You're going to be a father." They stared at each other. Then, simultaneously, they started laughing, the kind of slightly hysterical laughter that came from too much emotion with nowhere to go. "We have no idea what we're doing," Clara managed. "None whatsoever. The house is too small. Way too small. We don't have a cradle or clothes or anything a baby needs. We have 7 months to figure it out." Rowan pulled her up, held her close. "We'll figure it out." Clara buried her face in his chest. "What if I'm a terrible mother?" "You won't be. You don't know that. I know you. I know you're strong and stubborn, and you don't give up on things. That's what matters." "What if you're a terrible father? Then the kid'll grow up knowing how to survive, at least." He pulled back to look at her. "We're going to mess this up, Clara. Both of us. We're going to make mistakes and second-guess ourselves and probably damage this kid in ways we can't even imagine yet. But we're also going to love them, and that's got to count for something. It counts for everything." They stood like that, holding each other as the afternoon light shifted across the floor. Bear watched them from his bed, head tilted like he knew something had changed but couldn't quite figure out what. The next months were a blur of preparation and panic. Rowan threw himself into building, a cradle first carved from pine with surprising delicacy. Then an addition to the house, a small room that could be closed off for the baby. He worked from dawn until dark, driving himself with an intensity that worried Clara. "You need to rest," she told him one evening, watching him sand the cradle for what had to be the 100th time. "It's not smooth enough. Baby's skin is delicate. The baby's not even born yet. You have time. What if I don't finish before—" "You will. Rowan, look at me." She waited until he did. "You're trying to build your way out of being scared, but it's not working. You're still scared, just more exhausted." He set down the sandpaper. "I don't know how to do this, Clara. How to be responsible for a whole other person. How to keep them safe up here. The same way you keep me safe. The same way you keep yourself safe. One day at a time. What if that's not enough? Then we adapt. We learn. We ask for help when we need it." Clara moved closer, placed his hand on her stomach where a small bump had started to show. "Feel that? That's our kid. Already here, already real, and they're going to need you. Not perfect, just present." Rowan's hand spread across her belly, gentle and reverent. "Hi," he said quietly, talking to the bump. "I'm your dad. I'm probably going to screw this up, but I promise I'll try my best." Clara felt the baby move, a flutter barely there. "Did you feel that? Was that the baby?" First time I felt movement. Rowan's face transformed. Fear gave way to wonder, and for a moment he looked young, almost boyish. "They're really in there. They're really in there." As Clara's belly grew, so did the changes in their life. The town, hearing about the pregnancy, responded in unexpected ways. Women Clara had never spoken to stopped her to offer advice, hand-me-down clothes, old baby items their own children had outgrown. Margaret organized a gathering, not quite a party but close, where a dozen women came bearing gifts and stories and the kind of practical wisdom that only came from experience. "Sleep now while you can," one woman said. "Don't listen to anyone who says you're doing it wrong," another added. "Every baby's different. Trust your instincts. Get help when you need it. Pride's got no place in motherhood." Clara absorbed it all, grateful and overwhelmed. These were women who'd judged her just months ago, who'd whispered about her choices. But pregnancy had a way of breaking down walls. A baby was neutral ground. Rowan, meanwhile, found his own support in unexpected places. Sheriff Dalton stopped by one afternoon with a hand-carved rocking horse. "Made it for my own kids years back," he said gruffly. "They're too old for it now. Thought yours might want it." Rowan took it carefully, running his hands over the smooth wood. "This is beautiful work. Your dad taught me how to carve, actually, back before—" Dalton cleared his throat. "Before things went sideways. He was a good man. Would have been proud of you." "I'm not sure about that." "I am. You survived something that would have broken most people. Built a life despite everyone working against you. That takes strength." Dalton shifted uncomfortably. "And you're going to be a father. That's worth being proud of." After he left, Rowan stood holding the rocking horse, his jaw working. "You okay?" Clara asked. "He knew my father. I'd forgotten that. They used to go hunting together. He's trying to make amends." "I know, it's easier when people stay in their boxes, when the town is all bad and we're all good. But it's not that simple, is it?" It never was. Summer came in hot and bright. Clara's belly swelled until moving became an effort, until sleeping was impossible, until she felt like she might burst. Rowan hovered, anxious and attentive, driving her slightly crazy with his constant checking. "I'm fine," she said for what felt like the 1,000th time. "You're breathing heavy." "I'm 8 months pregnant. Everything makes me breathe heavy." "Should I get Margaret?" "Rowan, I love you, but if you ask me one more time if you should get Margaret, I'm going to throw something at you." He held up his hands. Okay, I'm just scared. I know, me too, but hovering doesn't help." He tried to give her space after that. Tried and failed, mostly. Clara found it equal parts annoying and endearing. This man who'd lived alone for years, who'd learned to need no one, was now terrified of being more than 10 feet away from her. The contractions started on a Tuesday afternoon in late August. Clara was folding laundry when the first one hit, a tightening across her belly that made her pause. She waited. 15 minutes later, another one. "Rowan?" she called. He appeared immediately. "What? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, but I think it's time." His face went white. "Time? Like time. Yes, time. You need to go get Margaret, now." He didn't move, just stood there, frozen. "Rowan, go!" That broke through. He grabbed his coat, whistled for Bear, and took off running down the trail. Clara watched him go, then turned her attention to what needed doing. She changed into an old nightgown, spread sheets across the bed, gathered the supplies Margaret had told her to prepare. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Clara gripped the bedpost and breathed through it. Fear tried to rise, but she pushed it down. Women had been doing this since the beginning of time. She could do it too. Margaret arrived an hour later, Rowan panting behind her. She took one look at Clara and nodded approvingly. "Good. You're prepared. How far apart are the pains?" "About 10 minutes. Then we've got time. Rowan, boil water, lots of it, and stay useful. I'll call you if we need you." "I want to stay," he said. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that? It's not pretty." "I don't care. She's my wife. That's my baby. I'm staying." Clara reached for his hand. "Stay." So he stayed. Through the long afternoon as the contractions grew closer and stronger. Through the evening as Clara's water broke and the real pain began. Through the night as she labored, alternating between walking and resting, between screaming and silent concentration. Rowan held her hand until she squeezed hard enough to hurt. He brought her water, wiped her face with cool cloths, murmured encouragement even when she cursed him for getting her into this situation. "You did this to me," she gasped between contractions. "I know. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just, if we survive this, never again. Whatever you want." "I mean it. Never. Again." Margaret, working between Clara's legs, smiled. "You say that now. Wait until you hold this baby. You'll forget all about the pain." "I won't forget," Clara insisted. Then another contraction hit, and she forgot about everything except breathing through it. Dawn was breaking when Margaret finally said, "All right, Clara, next contraction, you push. This baby's ready to meet you." Clara pushed and pushed and pushed until she thought she might tear in half, until she understood why women died doing this, until she wanted to give up, except giving up wasn't an option. "I can see the head," Margaret said. "One more, Clara. One more big push." Clara bore down with everything she had left, felt something give way, felt a rush of pressure and pain and relief all mixed together, and then a cry. Thin and wavering, but unmistakably alive. "It's a girl," Margaret announced, holding up a tiny, angry, perfect creature. "You have a daughter!" Clara collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. Rowan stood beside her, his own face wet, staring at the baby like he'd never seen anything so miraculous. Margaret cleaned the baby quickly, checked her over, then wrapped her in a blanket and placed her in Clara's arms. "She's perfect," Margaret said. "All 10 fingers, all 10 toes, good strong lungs. Congratulations." Clara looked down at her daughter, red-faced and squalling, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably be brown like Rowan's. She was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen. "Hi, baby," Clara whispered. "We're your parents. We have no idea what we're doing, but we love you so much." The baby's crying quieted at her voice. Those unfocused eyes seemed to search for the source of the sound. Rowan reached out tentatively, touched one tiny fist. The baby's fingers wrapped around his, gripping with surprising strength. "She knows you," Clara said. "She's perfect," Rowan breathed. "She's absolutely perfect." They named her Emma, after Clara's mother. Emma Grace Hale. It had a good sound to it, solid and strong. The first days were a blur of exhaustion and wonder. Emma slept, woke to eat, cried, and slept again. Clara fed her, changed her, held her, and tried to sleep whenever the baby slept. Rowan hovered, anxious and helpful in turns, learning how to swaddle and burp and soothe. Margaret stayed for 3 days, teaching them everything she could, how to tell different cries apart. how to check if the baby was too hot or too cold, when to worry, and when to trust that everything was normal. "You're doing fine," she assured them on the third day as she prepared to leave. "Better than fine. This baby's lucky to have you." After she left, it was just the three of them. The house felt different now, fuller, louder, more alive. Bear had taken to sleeping under Emma's cradle, appointed himself her guardian. Whenever she cried, he'd look at Clara and Rowan like they'd better fix this problem immediately. "Our dog's judging our parenting," Rowan observed one night. "He's not wrong to. We're making this up as we go." "All parents do, I think." Clara looked down at Emma, asleep in her arms. "She's so small, so fragile." "She's stronger than you think. Look at her parents. She's got stubborn bred into her bones." "Poor kid." "Lucky kid." The town's response to Emma's birth was unexpected. People stopped by with gifts, blankets, clothes, toys carved from wood. The same people who'd shunned Rowan brought offerings for his daughter. Clara didn't know what to make of it. "Babies are safe," Margaret explained when Clara asked. "They haven't done anything to judge yet. People can express kindness to a baby without feeling like they're betraying their position on you and Rowan. That's depressing. That's human nature. Take the gifts. Let people be kind in whatever way they can manage. It's a start." So Clara took the gifts and thanked the givers and tried not to think too hard about the contradictions. Emma was fed and warm and loved. That was what mattered. When Emma was 3 weeks old, Rowan surprised Clara by suggesting they take her to town. "Are you sure?" Clara asked. "No, but I think we should do it anyway. Show her off. Let people see she's real and healthy and ours." "You want to show her off? Is that weird?" Clara smiled. "It's wonderful. But are you ready for the attention? I'm ready to stop hiding. Ready to be part of the world again, for her sake if not mine." He looked at Emma, asleep in her cradle. "I don't want her growing up thinking she has to hide. Don't want her to be ashamed of who her father is." "She won't be. How could she be? You're the best man I know." "You're biased." "Completely." Doesn't make it less true. They made the trip the following Saturday. Clara carried Emma in a sling Margaret had given her, the baby tucked warm and safe against her chest. Rowan walked beside them, Bear at his heels. The town square was busy with the weekend market. People stopped and stared as they approached, conversations dying mid-sentence. Clara felt Rowan tense beside her, but he kept walking, head up, refusing to shrink. Margaret saw them first and hurried over. "Let me see her." Clara adjusted the sling so Margaret could peek at Emma's face. The baby was awake, looking around with that unfocused newborn gaze. "She's beautiful," Margaret said loudly enough for others to hear. "Absolutely beautiful, and growing so fast." Other women gathered, drawn by the universal appeal of a new baby. They cooed and asked questions and offered advice. Clara answered patiently, aware of Rowan standing slightly apart, watching. Then Sheriff Dalton approached with an older woman Clara didn't recognize. "Mrs. Hale," he said formally, "this is my wife, Dorothy. She wanted to meet your daughter." Dorothy Dalton looked kind but nervous. "We heard you had a girl. I brought something." She held out a small package wrapped in cloth. "It's not much, just a blanket I knitted." Clara took it, surprised. "Thank you. That's very kind." "She's beautiful," Dorothy said, peering at Emma. Then she looked at Rowan. "She has your eyes." Rowan nodded, seeming unsure how to respond. "My husband told me what he did," Dorothy continued, "coming up to your house with accusations when the fires started again. It was wrong. I told him so at the time." She took a breath. "You deserved better from this town. Both of you. And I'm sorry it took a baby being born for some of us to remember that." The square had gone quiet. People were listening, watching. Rowan's voice came out rough. "I appreciate that. We'd like to do better, if you'll let us." Clara felt Rowan's hand find hers, squeezed tight. This was the moment, the choice. They could hold on to the anger, the justified resentment, or they could let it go and try to build something new. "We'd like that too," Rowan said finally. The tension broke. People started talking again, coming forward to see the baby, to offer congratulations, to bridge the gap that had stood for too long. Not everyone. There were still hard faces in the crowd, people who crossed to the other side of the street rather than acknowledge them. But enough people smiled, enough people tried, that Clara felt something shift. They weren't outcasts anymore. They were just a family, imperfect and scarred, but real. On the walk home, Emma fell asleep against Claire's chest. Rowan was quiet, processing. "You okay?" Claire asked. "I think so. It's strange, being welcomed after so long being shut out. It'll take time for everyone to adjust." "I know." He looked at her. "Thank you." "For what?" "For pushing me. For not letting me hide. For giving me a reason to try. You gave me the same thing." They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, their daughter sleeping between them, Bear ranging ahead to scout the trail. The mountain rose around them, familiar and solid. And for the first time since Claire had climbed this path with nothing but a trunk and hope, it truly felt like coming home. Emma turned one on a warm August afternoon, and Clara stood in the doorway watching her daughter take wobbling steps across the porch while Rowan hovered nearby, arms outstretched and ready to catch her. The baby, not really a baby anymore, squealed with delight each time she made it a few steps before toppling onto her padded bottom. "She's going to be running by next week," Rowan said, scooping Emma up and spinning her until she shrieked with laughter. "Don't remind me. I can barely keep up with her crawling." It was true. Emma had inherited her parents' stubbornness, and then some. She climbed everything, explored everything, put everything in her mouth. Bear had appointed himself her constant shadow, following her around with the patience of a saint as she grabbed his ears and used him to pull herself upright. The house had changed to accommodate her. The addition Rowan built was now Emma's room, painted soft yellow with wildflowers Clara had stenciled on the walls. Toys littered every surface. Some store-bought from their increasingly frequent trips to town, others carved by Rowan's hands during long winter evenings. The place looked lived in now, loved in, full of the beautiful chaos that came with a child. "Margaret's coming up tomorrow with the birthday cake," Clara said, joining Rowan on the porch. "And she's bringing Dorothy Dalton and a few others. I hope that's okay." Rowan settled Emma on his hip. "It's good. Nice that Emma will have people around who aren't just us." "You sure? I know crowds still make you tense. I'm working on it." He kissed the top of Emma's head. "For her, I'm working on it." The party the next day was small but warm. 6 women from town made the climb, bearing gifts and food and the easy camaraderie that came from shared experience. They sat on the porch while Emma played, passing her around, telling stories about their own children's first years. "Mine ate dirt," one woman said. "Just grabbed handfuls and shoved it in his mouth. Thought I was failing as a mother until I learned they all do it." "Mine screamed for 6 months straight," another added. "Colic. Thought I'd lose my mind. Then one day he just stopped and started smiling instead." Clara listened, soaking in the normalcy of it. These were the same women who'd whispered about her just 2 years ago. Now they sat on her porch, sharing the universal struggles of motherhood like she'd always been part of their circle. After they left, Clara found Rowan sitting on the porch steps, Emma asleep against his chest. "Good day?" she asked. "Strange day. Good strange." He adjusted his hold on Emma carefully. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For people to remember they're supposed to hate me. Maybe they're tired of hating. Maybe Emma gave them permission to stop. That's a lot of weight to put on a 1-year-old. She doesn't carry it. We do. But she made it possible." Clara sat beside him. "Do you ever think about leaving? Going somewhere new where nobody knows what happened?" Rowan was quiet for a long moment. "I used to. Every day for the first year after the fire. I'd imagine packing up, heading west, starting over where my name didn't mean anything." He looked out at the mountain, the familiar trees and ridges. "But then I realized running away would mean they won, would mean I let them drive me out of the only home I've ever known, and I was too stubborn for that. And now I've got you and Emma. Now this mountain isn't a prison, it's home. And the town, it's not forgiveness exactly what they're offering. It's more like collective amnesia. They're choosing to forget the parts that make them uncomfortable. Does that bother you? Sometimes. But I'm choosing to forget some parts too. The worst of the anger, the deepest cuts. Maybe that's how we all move forward, by deciding what we don't need to carry anymore." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "When did you get so wise?" "When I married a woman who wouldn't let me wallow." They sat like that as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma slept on, her small chest rising and falling with perfect trust. Bear dozed at their feet, The chickens settled into their coop. Everything was ordinary and perfect in its ordinariness. The seasons turned again. Emma grew, learned new words, started forming complete sentences that made both her parents laugh and cry in equal measure. She called Rowan Papa and Clara Mama and Bear Dog Dog, no matter how many times they tried to teach her his real name. Rowan continued serving on the town council, his voice carrying more weight as time passed. He proposed a lending library, books anyone could borrow, regardless of ability to pay. The council approved it, and Clara helped organize the donated volumes, creating a small reading room in the back of the general store. "You're good at this," Henry commented one afternoon as Clara shelved books. "Community building. I'm just organizing books. You're making it so people who can't afford to buy books can still read them. That's bigger than organizing." He paused. "I'm glad you came here, Mrs. Hale. Glad you stayed. You've been good for this town." Clara looked up, surprised. "I think it's been good for me, too." And it had been. The woman who'd arrived with nothing but a trunk and determination had found a life here. Had built something real from the raw materials of hope and stubbornness. But building something didn't mean it was finished. One afternoon in late autumn, as Clara hung laundry while Emma played nearby, she noticed smoke rising from the valley below. Too much smoke. The wrong color. She scooped up Emma and ran inside. "Rowan?" He emerged from the shed, saw her face, followed her gaze to the smoke. "That's coming from town." "We need to go. People might need help." "Clara, it could be dangerous." "Then we'll be careful, but we're going." They made the trip down faster than Clara thought possible with a toddler on her hip. The closer they got, the more apparent the scope of the fire became. It was the old mill, the skeletal building that had been abandoned for years, now fully engulfed in flames. Half the town had gathered, forming bucket brigades from the creek. Clara passed Emma to Margaret and joined the line, passing buckets until her arms screamed. Rowan was at the front, closest to the fire, his face streaked with soot. It took hours to bring the blaze under control. By the time they succeeded, the mill was nothing but charred beams and ash, but the surrounding buildings had been saved and no one was hurt. Clara found Rowan sitting on the ground, coughing, his clothes singed. She dropped beside him. "You okay?" "Yeah, just need to catch my breath." He looked at the ruins. "All that for a building nobody's used in 10 years. Sheriff Dalton approached, equally exhausted. "Rowan, I need to ask, where were you when this started?" The question hung in the air. Clara felt her spine stiffen, ready to defend, to fight. But Rowan just looked at Dalton steadily. "I was at my house. Clara and Emma can both confirm it. We saw the smoke and came down together." "That's what I thought. Just had to ask. People talk, you know." "People always talk." "Yeah, but this time they're saying you're the one who saved the baker's shop. Saw you on the roof with a bucket when the wind shifted. Said if you hadn't acted fast, we'd have lost half the street." Rowan blinked. "I just did what needed doing." "I know, and people noticed." Dalton offered his hand. "Thank you." Rowan shook it, looking dazed. Around them, other townspeople were starting to approach, offering thanks, clapping him on the shoulder. The man they'd blamed for fire 3 years ago had just fought one to save their town. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Later, walking home in the dark with Emma asleep in Clara's arms, Rowan was quiet. "You thinking about the first fire?" Clara asked. "Hard not to. Standing there fighting flames, knowing people were watching and probably wondering if I'd started it." He shook his head. "But then they thanked me. Looked me in the eye and thanked me. You earned it." "Did I? Or did I just finally do something they couldn't twist into suspicion? Does it matter?" Rowan considered this. "No, I guess it doesn't. They believe what they want to believe. I can't control that. I can only control what I do. And today you did something good. Today I did what anyone would have done. That's the point. You're not the villain they made you out to be. You're just a man, flawed and human and doing his best." "When did you become a philosopher?" "When I married a man who made me think about what really matters." They reached the house to find Bear waiting on the porch, tail wagging in relief at their return. Inside, Clara put Emma to bed while Rowan washed the soot from his face and hands. When she emerged, she found him standing at the window, looking out at nothing. "I want to tell you something," he said. "Something I've been thinking about for a while." Clara waited. "That day you arrived, When I saw you walking up the trail with that trunk, I almost sent you away. Almost told you it was a mistake, that you should leave before you got tangled up in my mess. Why didn't you? Because you looked so determined, so sure. And I realized I wanted whatever you had. That certainty, that courage to walk towards something instead of away from it. He turned to face her. You changed everything, Clara. Not just my circumstances, but me. Who I am. What I believe I deserve. You deserved good things all along. Maybe. But I didn't believe it until you showed up and acted like I did. Like I was worth the climb, worth the risk, worth building a life with. His voice went rough. I'm not good with words, but I need you to know, you saved me. In every way a person can be saved. Clara crossed to him, took his hands. You saved me too. From a life of making myself small, from believing I had to settle for scraps. You showed me what it looks like to stand firm in who you are, even when the world wants you to disappear. We saved each other then. Yeah, we did. They stood together in the quiet house, their daughter sleeping in the next room, their dog dozing by the fire. Outside, the mountain held them in its ancient embrace, and Clara felt something settle deep in her bones, the certainty that this was exactly where she was supposed to be. Winter came again, but this time they were ready. The house was warm, the pantry full, Emma bundled in sweaters Margaret had knitted. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading stories to Emma, teaching her songs, watching her grow. One night, after Emma was asleep, Clara found Rowan at the table with paper and pencil, writing slowly. What's that? She asked. A letter. To my father. He looked up, almost embarrassed. I know he's gone, but I wanted to tell him about Emma, about you, about everything that's happened. Can I read it? He handed it over. Clara read words of gratitude and grief, of second chances and hard-won peace. The letter of a son to a father, spanning the distance between life and death with simple honesty. It's beautiful, she said, handing it back. It's probably crazy. It's human. We all need to talk to the people we've lost sometimes. Rowan folded the letter carefully. What would you tell your mother, if you could? Clara thought about the woman she barely remembered, gone when Clara was too young to form lasting memories. I'd tell her I made it, that I found a good life, a good man, a good daughter, that I'm not invisible anymore. She'd be proud of you. Your father would be proud of you too. They sat together in the firelight, holding hands across the table, connected to their past and present and future all at once. Spring brought news that Margaret was sick. Nothing dramatic, just a persistent cough that wouldn't go away. By summer, it was clear that whatever she had was serious. Clara visited her as often as she could, bringing Emma, helping with the shop. You don't have to do this, Margaret said one afternoon, watching Clara organize inventory while Emma played with fabric scraps. I want to. You've got your own life, your own family. You're part of that family. You married us. You helped bring Emma into the world. You taught me how to survive here. Clara set down the bolt of fabric she'd been holding. Let me help. Margaret's eyes filled. You're a good woman, Clara Hale. I learned from the best. By autumn, Margaret was bedridden. The town rallied, taking turns sitting with her, bringing food, keeping her company. Clara was there the day she died, holding her hand while Margaret drifted away peacefully. The funeral drew the whole town. Rowan gave a eulogy that had half the attendees in tears, talking about Margaret's kindness, her courage, her unwavering moral compass. She saw the best in people, he said, even when we couldn't see it ourselves. She believed in second chances, in redemption, in the power of choosing to do better. His voice cracked. She believed in me when no one else did, and I'll carry that with me until the day I die. After the funeral, as they walked home, Clara felt the weight of loss pressing down. Margaret had been her first real friend here, her guide, her proof that good people still existed. She lived well, Rowan said quietly. That's what matters. Not how long, but how well. I'm going to miss her. Me too. They climbed the mountain in silence, Emma sleeping against Rowan's shoulder. At home, they tucked her into bed and stood together watching her sleep. I've been thinking, Rowan said, about the shop. Margaret's shop? Her nephew's supposed to inherit it, but he lives 3 territories over, doesn't want to run it. Told the sheriff he's planning to sell everything and close it down. That's a shame. It's the only fabric shop for miles. What if we bought it? Clara turned to stare at him. What? We've got some savings, not a lot, but some. And you're good at running it. You basically have been for the past 6 months. We could keep it going, keep Margaret's legacy alive. Rowan, that's a huge decision. We'd have to spend more time in town. We'd be taking on debt, responsibility. I know, but I think we should do it anyway. He looked at her. We can't hide up here forever. Emma needs to be around other people, other kids. And the town, it's not perfect, but it's trying. Maybe we should try too. Clara thought about it, about leaving the safety of the mountain, about integrating more fully into the community that had once rejected them. It was terrifying. It was also right. Okay, she said, let's do it. They bought the shop with a loan from the bank and reopened it a month later. Clara ran it 4 days a week while Rowan watched Emma and maintained their property. The other 3 days, they stayed on the mountain, keeping their roots deep in the place that had sheltered them. It was a balance, sometimes precarious. There were days when Clara missed the simplicity of their isolated life. Days when Rowan struggled with being around so many people. But there were also good days. Days when Emma played with other children while Clara worked. Days when Rowan came to help and found himself in conversation with someone who'd once crossed the street to avoid him. The town changed around them, slowly but surely. A new family moved in, young couple with 2 kids, escaping some tragedy of their own. Clara watched the town's response, saw echoes of how they'd treated her and Rowan. She made a point of welcoming them, of offering friendship without questions. Pay it forward, she told Rowan. That's what Margaret would have wanted. Emma turned 5, then 6. She was wild and bright and fearless, climbing trees on the mountain and charming customers in the shop with equal ease. She had Rowan's eyes and Clara's stubborn streak and her own fierce spirit that belonged to no one but herself. One evening, sitting on the porch while Emma chased fireflies with Bear, Clara said, "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" "How so?" "If I hadn't answered that advertisement, if you hadn't written those letters, if either of us had given up." Rowan pulled her close. "I think about it sometimes. Think about how close I came to not putting that ad in the paper, how I almost threw it away a dozen times." "What stopped you?" "Hope, I guess. Or maybe desperation disguised as hope. The idea that somewhere out there, someone might understand what it meant to choose a hard path and walk it anyway. And you found me. And I found you, or you found me. Either way, we found each other." Emma ran up to them, breathless and glowing. "Mama, Papa, look!" She opened her hands to reveal a firefly, its light pulsing soft and steady. "I caught the light." "So you did, baby," Clara said. "Now let it go so it can go home." Emma released the firefly, watching it spiral up into the darkening sky. "Will it come back?" "Maybe. If it wants to. If it remembers this is a good place to be." The firefly disappeared into the gathering dark, and Emma settled between her parents, content. Bear laid his head on Clara's feet. The mountain breathed around them, ancient and patient. "Tell me a story," Emma demanded, "about when you and Papa met." Clara and Rowan exchanged glances. They'd told her pieces over the years, carefully edited for a child's ears. But maybe it was time for more of the truth. "Your Papa lived on this mountain all alone," Clara began, "and I lived far away in a big city. We were both lonely, both looking for something we couldn't quite name. So your Papa put an advertisement in a newspaper." "What's an advertisement?" "It's a message asking for something. He asked if anyone wanted to come live on a mountain with him, and I saw it and said yes." "Why?" "Because sometimes you just know. You read something or meet someone and you feel it right here." Clara touched Emma's chest over her heart. "You feel like maybe this is what you've been looking for." "And was it?" "It was better than what I was looking for, because I found your Papa, and then we found you, and now we have this whole life we built together." Emma considered this seriously. "Was it hard?" Rowan answered, his voice gentle. "Very hard. Some people didn't want us to be together. Some people were mean. But we kept going anyway because we knew what we had was worth fighting for. And now? Now those people mostly leave us alone. Some of them even became friends. Not all of them, but enough." "What about the mean ones?" Clara smoothed Emma's hair. "They're still there. But we don't let them decide what our life looks like. We decide that, you understand?" Emma nodded slowly. Like how Tommy Brenner says girls can't climb trees, but I climb them anyway? Exactly like that. They sat together as the stars emerged one by one. Emma's questions gradually slowed, her breathing evening out as sleep crept in. Rowan carried her inside to bed while Clara stayed on the porch, looking out at the town lights twinkling in the valley below. This life hadn't been what she'd imagined when she'd answered that advertisement. It was harder in some ways, simpler in others. It was built on honesty and stubbornness, and the daily choice to keep choosing each other. Rowan returned, settled beside her. She's out. She had a lot of questions tonight. She's getting older, noticing more. He took Clara's hand. What do we tell her when she's old enough to understand all of it? The fire, the accusations, everything? The truth. That her father was accused of something he didn't do. That people believed the worst because it was easier than believing the best. That it took years to rebuild, and some things never fully healed. That's a heavy truth for a kid. Maybe, but it's real. And we'll also tell her that despite all that, we built something good. That we didn't let other people's cruelty make us cruel. That we chose love over bitterness. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. You think we did the right thing? Staying here instead of starting over somewhere new? I think we did the brave thing. Running would have been easier, but this... Clara gestured at the house, the mountain, the town below. This is ours. We earned every inch of it, and Emma's growing up knowing she belongs here. Knowing her roots go deep. That matters. Yeah, it does. Years passed. The rhythm of their life became routine. Mountain days and town days, quiet evenings and busy mornings. The slow accumulation of ordinary moments that made up a life. Emma grew into a confident young girl who was equally at home in the wilderness and the town, who climbed trees and sold fabric with equal enthusiasm. The shop thrived under Clara's management. She expanded the inventory, added sewing classes, created a space where women gathered to work and talk and support each other. It became more than a business. It became a community hub, a place where connections formed and strengthened. Rowan found his own path forward. He kept his seat on the council, using his voice to advocate for the marginalized and forgotten. He taught woodworking to boys from town, passing on his father's skills. He was still quiet, still preferred the mountain to crowds, but he'd learned to exist in both worlds. And slowly, imperceptibly, Rowan Hale stopped being the man falsely accused of arson and became simply Rowan Hale, husband, father, craftsman, neighbor. The past didn't disappear, but it loosened its grip. One day, nearly 8 years after Clara had first climbed that mountain, she and Rowan stood together at the ridge where they'd gotten married. Emma was at a friend's house in town. They had the mountain to themselves, just like old times. You ever regret it? Rowan asked. All of this? Clara didn't have to think. Not once. Not even on the hardest days. You? Only that it took me so long to put that advertisement in the paper. Could have found you years earlier. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to. Any earlier, and we might not have been ready. Maybe. He pulled her close, and they stood looking out over the valley as the sun began to set. Thank you. For what? For choosing me. For staying when you could have left. For building this life with me even when it was hard. For Emma. For everything. Clara turned in his arms to face him. Thank you for writing those letters. For being honest about who you were. For letting me in even when every instinct probably told you to keep the walls up. For being the kind of man worth climbing a mountain for. They kissed there on the ridge, the same spot where Margaret had pronounced them husband and wife all those years ago. The mountain held them steady, witness to their beginning and their continuation. Because that was the thing about love, Clara had learned. It wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about showing up day after day and choosing each other despite the difficulty. It was about building something real from flawed materials. Two broken people finding wholeness together. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire. They started the walk home together, hands linked, comfortable in the silence. Ahead, the house waited. Their house, full of Emma's laughter and Bear's loyalty and years of accumulated memories. It wasn't the life Clara had imagined when she'd boarded that stagecoach with nothing but hope and determination. It was better. Harder and messier and more real than any fantasy. It was theirs. And that, Clara thought.
I wonder how many cards I just played. Well, I'm gonna take Chandler's side on this, man. Why? Chandler just made fun of you for being short, and me. Oh my god, this guy's gonna fucking kill me in one go. Ben, we have to kill him right now.
Block up.
Ben, I don't got a single
up.
fucking block. No, just James.
You gotta block up, bro.
I'm going drinking. I might just genuinely have alcohol poisoning. That might be
Have
fire.
fun, Hina.
That'll be fire.
That sounds fun. Alcohol poisoning. W.
It is.
Every time you hit it, you take damage, by the way. Take 5 damage.
Oh, I'm dead, GG. Oh, it has thorns.
You're perfectly dead, actually. Oh my god.
How does this always
Why
happen?
would you do this to me, James?
Ben, my deck sucks balls. And there hasn't been a single campfire.
We're about to hit one.
I'm 5'4", but I'm growing, I swear.